lot of people go through life doing things badly. Racing's important to men who do it well. When you're racing, it's life. Anything that happens before or after, just waiting.
Matt Williams got a brilliant start from the third row of the grid.
He's gone, he's hit him, he's straight off at the chase.
A half-second lead. Oh, with a simmering car in the background.
He has it. Oh, he's round on the last lap.
There's a massive, massive accident.
Ducks to the inside, what a move, what a move.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to round number 3 of the AMS Oz GT3 Sprint Series for 2020, proudly brought to you by Antara, loose sim sport. Antara, resort-style living in Saudi Arabia. Been very, very grateful to be on top of the sponsorship for this little series and offering up a nice little prize to the winner of the GT3 Sprint Series. Well, we spend our first couple of rounds crisscrossing the equator, back and forth between Japan and Australia, and we're back where we started. The same country we started in for round 1, just not the same circuit. It is the Suzuka circuit, the only one on the calendar that has some GT3 track records to aim at. But the one thing that it does have, compared to a couple of other circuits on the calendar, is a little unique feature, and that is when daytime turns into dusk. So a little bit of a unique type of scenario for the drivers tonight. My name is Steve DeVries. Welcome aboard, and a welcome aboard to Josh Bagsy Bags and Michael Floodman Zalavari. Good evening, gents.
Mie Prefecture, I think it's pronounced Mie Prefecture in Japan. It's a brilliant circuit, this one.
Yeah, good evening, Basie. Good evening, Nether. Good evening, everyone. It's great to be at Suzuka, a track with some sports car history as well. Let's not forget about that. And a track which not only has a bit of a unique feature in this game where we have a day to night cycle that we can exploit, but also one of the few tracks in the world with the figure 8 layout, which will throw in a few challenges tonight, but also makes setup a little simpler for the guys in the field. So expect some really interesting results tonight.
Yeah, that's a unique thing you bring up there, Michael, too. It is one of only a handful of circuits in the world with the unique figure 8 layout, and it does make things a bit interesting with it being not a predominantly left-hand turning circuit or right-hand turning circuit. They have got to factor in for a bit of both here, so it's not like you have to set one side of the car up to be abused a bit more than the other side.
Yeah, I think, in fact, it's the only circuit that comes to mind which has a true figure 8 layout. There's other circuits, like for example the old Oran Park, when that used to exist with an internal figure 8 layout, which meant that you always had the same side of the tire loaded. But here it really is balanced almost perfectly between left side tire load and right side tire load. So it does mean that you can run maybe a more symmetrical setup to explore sides of the tire. But it really does throw up a little bit of a challenge as well, because there's a lot of sweeping corners, a lot of high loaded sections, and some of the most difficult corners in world motorsport at this circuit to contend with as well.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the mainstays for the last 20 or so, or 30 or so years, it's been on the calendar for Formula One racing and has its own heritage as well in sports car racing, not just at a local Asian Le Mans sense and, local Japanese Super GT as well, but also in world endurance as well. And GT3 machinery being a part of that, and that's the cars we find ourselves with tonight. Before we get into qualifying, coming up in about 7 or so minutes, we'll have a look at the point standings coming into tonight's round. So 2 of the 6 rounds have been completed. Bagsy, Will Devonish has got a nice, handy little 14-point margin out in front at the moment, but he has been made to earn all 3 of the victories that he's got so far.
Yeah, he certainly has. He's had Steve Bolger and Peter Savage chomping at his heels a lot of the time. He has won 3 of the 4 races we've had, with Peter Savage being the only other person who has, and that is why Peter Savage is only 14 points behind him. Steve Bolger, a bit further back, 39 points, but it's one of those things where a single for poor race is definitely going to cost you, and you're going to drop back in these standings. We have seen a couple of people who would normally have been a lot further up have poor races and have unfortunately dropped back a bit. Lewis Wedding being one who's had some terrible luck He's one of the fastest people here, but just bad luck has meant that he's not even in our top 12 here.
No, that's right. He's a lot further down the order in 19th as it stands at the moment, only having 6 points to his name. A couple of those races, he's also volunteered his time to fix up some of the dramas that we've been having. No more obvious than the last round at the Bend. A whole bunch of timing dramas, which we were sort of a bit bemused as to how they were coming about. Made life difficult for us as commentary crew to keep track of where everybody was. But he was in there trying to fix everything up for the second race to make sure people weren't losing laps. So not by choice, but he has had a few gremlins as well in the racing so far. We'd like to see what he can do in tonight's pair of races. He's in the top 5 at the moment, so it'd be nice to see him start to make his way up the standings. We have a look at our team's points as well, which is a new thing for this year. A bit more of a focus across all the Automobilista Australia series this year is the team points. It's actually the Loose Sim Sport pairing of Pete Savage and Steve Burko that are well and truly out in front. You can throw Zach Ross into that equation as well. He's also got one of the Loose Sim Sport Bentley Continentals. So all three of those guys doing pretty well to head off the Wedding Crashers Racing Lamborghinis for the moment, which is a far cry from what it was in the World Series, finishing up about a month or so ago. And then the defending champion Steve Bolger's team, Gravel Rash Racing, only with the 73 points, but still far from beaten, still 4 rounds to go, including tonight. Well, we might have a little bit more of a detailed look at this track while we still wait for things to tick over. Now, Bagsy's been the one that's been here in real life, but Michael, I think you're the one that has got most of the lowdown, given that this circuit is very, very prevalent in endurance racing around all various sorts of categories.
Yeah, this circuit, as we've made mention of, has a very long history, not only in F1, but in sports cars as well, hosting the Japanese endurance, a major endurance racing, endurance staple over I think it's a 50 or 60 year history since 1966. It's a circuit characterized by elevation change, long loaded corners, and some very, very difficult, awkward sections as well. How long we got? 5.807 kilometers, 18 turns, a almost even mixture of left and right turns as well, and of course the very famous sections in the S's to start the lap, then the Denga curves to bring you back up the hill to the hairpin spoon corner, which might just be the most awkward corner in the world, and then the famous 130R, that high-speed sweeper, which has been reprofiled once or twice to make it just a little bit safer. But all in all, it is a terrifying track to attempt, and something that when you do stitch a lap together, the rare times that you do, it does feel absolutely amazing.
Yeah, spot on there. One of the most difficult circuits in the world to master, but oh so satisfying when you get it right. And basically, we look back to the days in recent times gone past of Formula One, remembering that at one stage they were going through 130R flat out with the DRS wide open.
Yeah, back when they used to let you have DRS wherever you want in your qualifying laps, it was one of those things where it's even if you compare it to cars 10 years earlier, they could sometimes struggle to go through that flat. And it's been the side of some big accidents, because if you don't get it right and your car is not gripping, then you are having a express ticket to the wall on the outside. That's actually not too far away for this corner, because just below it is the drop-off down to Dunlop and the entry into Degner 1. So you've got to be very careful going through there. And there's every chance if you bugger up Spoon Curve down at the far end of the track with someone behind you, you could be going side by side through 130R, and that can end interestingly. We saw Alonso, I believe, go around the outside of Michael Schumacher there in 2005, and it's a bit easier to do in GT3 cars over Formula One cars. You're not going to have quite the aeroplane crash, but still potentially dangerous. I'm not sure if there'll be something in the driver's briefing about who might have to yield for who in 130R, if it's just going to be go for it. I'm hoping it's go for it.
it is essentially going to be go for it. But keeping in mind too, there is a few notes that have been offered up to the drivers tonight, and one of them concerns 130R, and that's about using the outside of the corner as, I guess, a boom or a runoff. If you get forced wide, then obviously you've got to retake your position. But if you do it all by yourself and just decide to try and keep your foot in it, you're going to have to give up a spot if you're battling another car. So it's just one of those things that we want to keep everybody, all four wheels, or at least two wheels inside the track, but they don't want them to abuse the runoff. The runoff is there for a reason. And in actual fact, it's not a commonly known thing, but those that are in the know will know this. This circuit can actually be split into two parts as well as the full GP layout, which we're racing tonight. There's the east layout and the west layout, and it's down at the final chicane where those two tracks basically split off. So if you were on the eastern layout, you would be coming up the S's, and then instead of going all the way through Dunlop, you'd be turning right and rejoining the circuit at the second part of the chicane. And if you're on the west layout, you would be coming down through 130R, hard stop for the chicane. Instead of doing a right over left, you basically do a double right and then pick up the circuit partway through Dunlop and head back down to the Degners. So this circuit has a few unique and interesting layouts. We've run this layout before in GT3. You can see the track records at the bottom there. And we've also run the west layout back in the Porsche Cup days of late 2018, early 2019. So couple of different variants here, each with their own unique sort of characteristics, but nothing strikes fear into a driver than the 5.8 full Grand Prix layout.
There's nothing quite like the full Grand Prix layout either. It's a beautiful track, follows the terrain, lots of up and down. It's up there with places like Spa, but it's just you could almost describe it as the perfect track in terms of when you drive it and you nail it, it's just beautiful.
Yeah, it's like a driver's track.
Yeah, and the full GP circuit really just hits every single part of a racer's repertoire. There's long straights, there's loaded corners, there's multi-apexes, there's elevation change, there's the slow corners and the hairpin, the clipping points and the dengers. It's really got a piece of everything that makes this track so special.
Yeah, sure does. Let's go and have a look at what's happening as the qualifying session's about to get underway. Interestingly, this is a bit of a surprise thrown up. The fastest man in qualifying, in practice, very, very late on, is Greg Turra with a 58.6. So that's not a bad time at all. That's pretty handy, and that's only 0.2 of a second off what the fastest race lap was back in early 2019. So not a bad time at all for the PMR Motorsports Nissan driver.
Yeah, a bit of a surprise. Definitely out of left field. We were expecting the likes of Peter Savage and Brendan Ross and Will Devenish to be the ones to really set the pace. But to see the Turras, both of them doing quite well. Noah's just on the other end of the top 10, but still in the mix. It's really encouraging to see them kick on after their decent results in the first two rounds of the Sprint Series. That Nissan especially looks quite strong as well. So we'll see if they can maintain that for the first competition session of the night, which will be qualifying for the first race.
Keeping in mind too is a single lap dash is the qualifying format in the GT3 Sprint Series. A little bit different to what it was in the World Series, where you had a full 10-minute timed session to do as many laps as you could jam into the session. And Termo in the number 51 Termo Engineering SRT Viper is out first. Behind him is Ujit Mishra in the Bangalore Motor Racing Porsche, making his debut in the category tonight.
It's a very nice livery on that Porsche with the Singapore Airlines.
Oh, and Termo's had a moment. He's gone round. Oh, he's gone round at. We've just missed it off screen.
It's a Dunlop.
Has there been an accident? I'm wondering.
Yeah,
there has. There's been a bit of an accident here between the two of them. So something's going on here. Let's go back and have a little bit of a look at the replay and see if we can work out what sort of happened. Here we go. Let's go on board from the bumper cam, and as they're heading up the hill,
just in the middle of the track.
And Termo had a moment, got on the loud pedal a bit. It was just in the middle of the track, and unsighted and side swipe.
Yeah, Mishra had nowhere to go there. Absolutely zero opportunity to figure out what was going on. It looks like that's already paid dues to Termo's lap in this qualifying session. Mishra has continued around, probably with some not insignificant damage to the front end, so he might be suffering for a bit of downforce over the course of his lap, but we'll see how he goes. We've got a few more people out on track as well, so we'll keep everyone abreast of when everyone starts their lap and how they all go.
Looks like we've got... go on.
Just getting some comments in the live chat as well from our friend Tim Redmond, one of the very, very fast Kiwis in Super 2, saying, was it a commentator's curse that we were following Turmo first and he ended up in the fence? But we don't want to put the commentator's curse on people here. We try not to, but sadly some of these things just tend to happen. We'll call it a coincidence, I think. Is what we'll call it.
He's first out the pit, so he's the one who has to be who we'd follow.
Someone's got to be first.
Yeah, it looks... Yeah. Exactly, but now it's going to be Mishra. And behind him, there's a couple of cars. One we've got looks like Hans Brunswick and Rhodey's behind him, and then Brendan Ross, the first of our hard hitters, is coming through the chicane now.
Yep, seeing right there. There's the Gary Neville car, which Hans Brunswick is piloting, and Rhodey in the Thermo Engineering Viper behind him. But Mishra will be the first one to set his flying lap. How quickly can he get on the power and get a decent lap time down with the damage that he is carrying from that little scuffle with Thermo? Up through the snake, now at the top end of the S's, and now the left-hander, this left-hander that just seems to go on and on and on and on and on at Dunlop as he crests the hill and can come down the hill for the first of the two Degnas. Just got a little bit of traffic ahead in Bagaccino's Ferrari through Degna 1 very smartly, keeps it on the deck at Degna 2, two wheels inside the line, which is good. Traffic gets out of the way. And now
Bagacino's got out of the way, and now he's got a basically the rest of the track clear in front of him.
Actually, very impressive first sector so far from Ujit Mishra. He's beat out both Rhodey and Hans that first sector mark, but Brendan Ross has come through with a 49.8 to the first sector, which is just under the bridge. So he has the carrot to chase at the moment.
Full second faster as well.
Yeah, a huge amount of time faster, but no one else has managed to get into the 49s through that first sector mark. Brian Walsh and Mike Colston both in the 51s, the first sector, as Ujit is coming through to the second sector mark any moment now, coming down the back straight.
It'll just before, as he gets past 130R, it'll strike up the next timing split, so uses all the track, almost put two wheels on the outside, just stays inside the white line. There's your second sector split, the 137, 127 flashes up. And that is a 46.4 in the middle sector. Hans Brunswick with a 46 flat. Brendan Ross with a 44.8 in the middle sector. So Brendan Ross in that Nissan is absolutely flying at the moment. Mishra's going to do a 2 minute 2. So just stops the clock at just over 2:02. So it's not bad for your first real competitive flying
Ross
lap.
Could be going sub 2 minute here, and yes, quite easily, 159.
Yeah, 59 flat for Ross.
We're going to have to go and find either Noah Tara or Peter Savage, because both of them betted Ross to the first sector. Ross's second sector was sublime, a 44.8. Noah Tara, who's just come through, a 45.1. So Tara is just over a tenth behind Ross as he comes to the main straight to finish his flying lap for this first race. And he sets a 59.2, 3/10-ish down on Brendan Ross.
We're just staying with Peter Savage
He's just coming through 130R now.
Yeah, he's a
he's
mile.
8 tenths up through 130R.
Yeah, almost 9 tenths.
Just this last chicane. It's the only feature of the final sector, really, and it's all about the power down out the chicane, braking as late as you can into it. How will Peter Savage go across the line?
He's going to go probably high 57 here. And he does. He goes mid 57. Very, very nice lap from Pete Savage. Look at the amount of time he found in the last sector alone. He was 8.5 tenths up the second sector split. That was 1.3 seconds by the time he got to the start-finish line. So that is a huge amount of time.
3 purple sectors right there.
And a very difficult mark to chase as well. And there's
looks like Turmo, Bagaccino, Hans Brunswick, and Manuel Centino have all done laps and not had them counted, so they will be starting at the back.
So Ross is continuing with his lap, which is a bit of a surprise because he should definitely be coming into the pits. At the moment, Steve Burko is on his timed lap at the moment, 49.3 to the first sector, which is pretty close to on par with Peter Savage. He's just coming up to the second sector mark in a moment. and he'll just break out on the entry to 130R, and he's a little bit further away, 7/10 away, which is still enough for second place at the moment, which is very encouraging for the Loose Sim Sport pair in those Bentleys. Bounds over the curb at the chicane. Let's see how he can get the power down. Just a little wiggle on the exit there as he comes through the final corner. A big drop onto the main straight here. And Burko, is he going to be able to put the Bentley on the front row against his teammate? And he does. Still a second away.
Lost
but,
a lot of time.
But 4/10 up on the next challenger in Brendan Ross. So that's a fair window to be eclipsed. But it doesn't look like at the moment anyone else is in the vicinity. Greg Turrow's just gone through Sector 1. He's a second away already from the pole time.
And the next man we're looking at here is Will Devonish is about to start his
Will Devonish isn't on the
well.
lap yet.
Yeah, he's on
Yeah,
the
so
lap
Will
right now.
Yeah, so the next few to look at will be Will Devonish and Lewis Wedding's just about to come to the pits as we've got 2.5 minutes remaining.
Clearly wanting to have all the attention on him because he's going to be the last man out.
Oh, unless Steve... we've forgotten to mention that Steve Bolger had a start from rear grid penalty after the incidents from the bend.
Yeah, correct.
As Will Devonish comes to start his lap. So that's the explanation for why Bolger is in the pit still.
Greg Tyre's 1.8 seconds down, but this is still going to be good enough for 5th at the moment because some people have really not been able to get their single lap pace together. So he's looking like he's going to come just behind Noah Tara. It depends on how well this final sector is. So as he comes up the line, the time to beat from Noah Tara is a 1:59.3 and it's 1:59.9. So 5th place. He'll start behind his younger son.
Called it perfectly there, 5th place on the dot. Now we look to Will Devonish's Lamborghini, the man who currently leads the championship after the first 2 rounds.
Very smooth through the first sector, I've noticed, as I'm riding on board with him. Through Denga 1, uses a lot of curb on the inside and gets it nicely pitched in for Denga 2. Just a little bit of oversteer in the mid-corner as he comes under the bridge, and he's half a second away from Peter Savage already as we go through the hairpin. It looked smooth in patches, but once he got to the Dengas, there was nothing to hold the rear wheels together, so he lost a fair amount of time there. Now we get through to the faster section of the course.
Yeah, you check out the car attitude from when it hit the curb at the first part of Degner as well. The car sort of started to bounce a little bit, ran to the outside of the corner, so probably a very, very stiff chassis at the moment. Maybe something that he's looked to tune up for the race itself, maybe looking to at least put himself on the first 2 rows of the grid, and then he can go from there. Now, I'm just watching off screen. Lewis Wedding's had a moment down here at the final chicane while he tries to get himself going, and he's finally got himself away. So he's very lucky.
I don't think that'll affect him too much
No,
because he's at the chicane on his outlap, so I think he'll be okay.
Devonish has managed to claw back a 10th in Sector 2. And in actual fact, it's a purple Sector 2 time with a 44.7. So this
just purple by 0.04 of a second as he comes across the line to finish his lap.
Front row start for Devonish, and he lost that 10th back the other way. So that's at least a positive start for Will. Being on the front row is definitely what he would want to start this race. Just the one man now to go, which is Lewis Wedding. A number of drivers, aside from Steve Bolger, have tried to set a lap time and failed. So Bolger, we know, has got the penalty, and he starts rear of grid. People that have failed to set a lap time and failed to put together: Termo, Bagaccino, Hans Brunswick, who we did see on a flying lap. Manuel Centino was definitely out there. All those guys have failed to set a competitive lap time in this session.
Oh, and Lewis is going to be on the ragged edge of doing the same as he came through.
Have a look at the time, though.
1/10 down.
Only
Wow.
a 10th down.
He must have used every single millimeter of that exit there as he takes a very early apex to the hairpin, maybe just outbraking himself there, coming down the back straight. Now he's absolutely on the ragged edge of adhesion coming through this section of the track. Impressive time so far, yeah.
See how he goes into sprint curve because he has an issue like he did into the hairpin there. The late apex option doesn't work quite as well here because you'll just end up in the barriers, but he looks like he's pulled that off quite well. Now the run up to 130R, going across the grid for the western layout and coming up to the very fast corner.
Yep.
small lift. You sort of get you have to do to be able to remain in track limit speed. Could have probably given a bit more, and he's 4/10 down now, so he's going to need an absolutely brilliant braking zone traction here, which we saw he didn't get in preparation for this lap.
Look how he tried to straighten up the chicane as much as possible too. Took it very, very early and tried to get as much square drive off as early as he could to maximise his front straightaway speed. And he goes to P3. Not that far behind Will Devonish either. So that's a very, very handy lap from the Antara
0.04
Acura.
of a second.
Yeah, and he lost that time in the hairpin. You could see it as he got very nervous at the front of the car. But that is your qualifying session. Peter Savage takes home another pole position for the Sprint Series with a 57.698, half a second ahead of the rest of the field to take pole position. What an impressive lap from Peter in the Loose Sim Sport Bentley.
Yeah, very, very impressive. So a pair of Bentleys in the top 4, and then Brendan Ross was one of the early sort of benchmarks that everybody needed to go against, but then the bar just kept getting lowered and lowered and lowered, and eventually Pete Savage was out in front, and well, at the end of the day, pretty comfortable margin, nearly just over a half second, guys. It's not something we sort of expected given last time out at the bend. It was all very, very tight at the top.
Yeah, it might be a case of certain tracks suiting certain driving characteristics as well, or maybe Peter's just found something in this track that he's managed to unlock that everyone else hasn't. I think, especially in that last sector, I'm not sure if he was able to hold it flat through 130R, or he just got the braking zone for the chicane perfect, or just took the right amount of curb. But his final sector compared to everyone else was just so far and away better than anyone else. He just seemed to be the one to actually stitch the lap together as well. So maybe Peter's got something at this circuit that he can exploit, or can carry on to beat everyone else. But yeah, it's unexpected to see such a large gap at the head of the field.
Yeah, and that 57.698 is the fastest lap we've seen across all the practice sessions that we've been running in the lead up to tonight's event as well, and it's fastest over Will's best time of a 58.172. So over one lap, Pete Savage has got Will Devonish's measure, but the translation is into how many laps tonight are going to be on the board. We're predicting somewhere around the 17 or 18 lap mark, given we've got a rolling start, we've got the formation lap, we've also got the one lap after the 30-minute timer has expired, so anything's possible here. And interesting to note, though, the top speed on Pete Savage's lap was a 265.8 kilometres an hour. It's still 4 kilometres an hour slower in a straight line than the Lamborghini of Will Devonish. So read into that what you will, gents.
We know Will Devonish is pretty good at getting the setup on that Lamborghini for what he likes for the circuit. So it's hard to really divine anything from it, because we've seen, this is still every single qualifying but one, Peter Savage has ended up on pole position, and Will Devonish is the only one who's been able to beat him in that regard. And then in every single race bar one, Will Devonish has won the race over Peter Savage. So Pete will be hoping to be able to hold on to the pole position and race win combo here. It's going to be very close at the front, I think, tonight.
Yeah, I think so too. There's a couple of other drivers just starting to make their way into the server as well. A few that missed qualifying. Cracker, Lime Mitch and Kalen Duncan all jumping in. So that gives us a 21-car grid. So very strong grid, very strongly represented by everybody around the country. So good to see the guys continuing to support the series. Good to see a bunch of new drivers coming through in a number of different series as well, regardless whether it's Super 2, GT3s, Porsche Cup as well is another one of those series that has started to become really, really popular, with the rear-wheel drive categories becoming the more popular categories here in AMS Oz. And it gives us a bit of a chance to have a look at what is coming up in the next couple of events, actually over the course of the next week. So tomorrow it continues on over on the Endurance Chat Media channel. You've got the ATCC Group A, that believe that's round 6, if memory serves me correctly here, Floodman, and it's the 1988 Adelaide Street Circuit. So a throwback to yesteryear, and we'll get to see all the Group A cars go around the streets of Adelaide, your hometown.
Yes, and my series as well that I've been running with Kiwi Chris, so we'll be having him back tomorrow night. So very excited to do that. And I actually had to go at streaming that one last week, which was a nerve-wracking experience, but all went very, very well. And I'll shout out to Rhodey for helping commentary last time out last week. And to you as well, Nether, for helping me get set up. It went way smoother than I expected, and that's all thanks to you.
Thank you very much. Supercars continues on Thursday night this week, so that is round number... actually, we're getting very close to over the halfway mark now. We're up to round 9, if memory serves me correctly, with the Hamilton Street Circuit. A circuit that a number of our Kiwi friends probably in the live chat are very familiar with. We've already had a burn around here in Super 2, and we now get to do 200 kilometres in supercars on Thursday night, so... Oh, that's going to be carnage. If anything, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens, who comes out the other side of that one. Super 2, second last round for Super 2 is on Friday night this week over on the Loose 89 channel. That is the Sandown Raceway event, and the last round was meant to be the Bend, but in light of the timing issues we had in GT3, that round has been scrapped, and we're going to replace that with another circuit. Lewis Wedding's doing his best to keep that one under wraps. I know what circuit he's looking at, but I'm not obliged to say. It's going to become very much a surprise for everybody. And then second round of Porsche Cup from Road Atlanta, which is another one of the circuits that's on the GT3 calendar. It's the last race of the GT3 Sprint Series as well, but it makes an appearance in Porsche Cup next Tuesday night over on Lewis's channel, Loose 89. That's another one you are happy to be calling with Lewis in this one, Flood. You
Yes.
do love a Porsche.
I do love a Porsche. I have since I was a very wee lad. And the first round at Long Beach last week was an absolute madhouse. It was extremely good racing throughout the field. And so hopefully when we go to Road Atlanta, which is one of my favorite circuits in the world, it's favorite circuit in the world, favorite type of cars in the world. It's going to be a beautiful night.
Yeah, the uphill and down nature of Road Atlanta is one of those things. It's almost like you can look at Suzuka here with the S's out the back of the pit complex, and you've got something similar at Road Atlanta, except the difference is it goes downhill, and it's probably a lot trickier than the S's here at Suzuka.
Yeah, it's a bit of a terrifying roller coaster there. And then as it comes back up, you kind of have the version of the Denga that goes the other way, but instead of being cambered in and kind of helping you swing around, it cambers out and kind of slides you out over that exit curb. So a very similar sequence of corners and very similar in terms of characteristic, at least for the first sector. But yeah, another track with long-time GT3 and sports car heritage as well. So we seem to be running a theme with the racetracks for this series and for the week.
Yeah, we certainly do. The one thing I will say, and Bagsy, I'm not sure what your thoughts are on this matter, the Americans can't name corners properly. We've seen this with a number of their circuits, and it's the same thing that happened at Road Atlanta, where they've gone and modified a circuit or a part of a circuit over time. In this case, it was the final chicane, which was a particular turn number. I think it was turn 8. And rather than make it an extra corner longer and say turn 8 is now turn 8, turn 9, 8, or other part of turn 8 is now turn 9, they just named it 8 and 8A. And they're very, very sort of unoriginal. I'm not sure where you stand on this matter, but I personally hate it.
Well, I think there's plenty of places that have unoriginal corner names. You've got things like Road America has some pretty good corner names. You've got the Carousel, that's pretty good. Thunder Valley, Canada Corner, things like that. They're pretty good. Yeah, I can't totally crap on them. There's I'm trying to think of some because not all corners need to be named. Some places just get sort of over the top with the naming of the corners.
I probably should say turn numbering, I think, is probably where it should have been. It shouldn't have been turn naming. It's
yeah,
turn
I can
numbering.
definitely agree. Turn numbering can be a bit
all over the place. Yeah, so I think as Bagsy said, not every corner needs to be named, but I think the numbering system over in America in particularly is an absolute travesty. So just on Road Atlanta, you have the first three corners of the S's with numbers, and then there is no corner numbers until you get to the end of the S's 4 corners later. But in contrast, on the back straight, you have turns 8 and 9, which are essentially a straight line. It is a bit of a mystery. But we'll talk more about that when we get to Road Atlanta, because the cars are on the grid and we're on our formation lap.
We certainly are. Bagsy's going to hit us up with this order. We've got a 21-car field.
just to quickly handle that, just remember that turn 2 in Austria isn't really a turn either, but it's still
Yeah,
All right, Peter Savage, pole position. Yes, again, he's pretty mainstay there. His pole position lap was only 2/10 off the quality record that Lewis Wedding has here, despite it only being one shot qualifying. So that's a very good lap
That's impressive.
from Peter Savage there. Will Devonish, second place. He was half a second down. It's just, that was a masterful lap from Peter Savage, and he's just ahead of Lewis Wedding with the team Antara Loose Sim Sport racing car. Steve Burko, fourth place. He was the only other person really in touch with this top group, because after Brendan Ross, you've got Noah Tara and Greg Tara, who were a fair way off the pace, but the two Taras once again next to each other. We'll see if they're battling again today. And we've got Zach Ross for Loose Sim Sport and Urjit Mishra, who is a rookie to the GT3. I'm not sure about what he's done in other race categories with AMS Oz though. Luke Joyner in 10th place as they head under the bridge. Brian Walsh has not made the start. He is starting from the pit lane, so that is very unfortunate for Brian Walsh. He's going to be a whole sector behind, which means they're essentially going to be at the Degners going under the bridge by the time he gets to leave the pit lane. So that's pretty much any chance of decent points gone for him. Mike Coulston starts in 12th alongside Brody, who's in 13th in that Xbox Viper. Liam Mitch in his BMW, Matt Harvey Repair and Tune, starts in 14th. Usually we used to see him a fair bit up the field here, so I'm wondering if he wasn't able to get quite as much practice as he usually did.
he had a penalty for issues last time out, so that's why he wasn't in qualifying.
Yeah, correct.
There we
He
go.
was,
That's why.
yeah,
So
he was
he's
solid in
doing-
that
to be
too.
honest, 14th is pretty good for not being able to qualify. Kalen Duncan in 15th place, Cracker in 16th, Termo in the PlayStation Viper. We saw him have issues on his outlap where he spun at Dunlop and was unable to complete a lap. Manuel Santino also unable to complete a lap, along with Hans Brunswick and Bagacino rounding out the rear of the field. Oh, apologies, Steve Bolger as well. I've
About to say, you don't want to forget, Steve Bolger at the back there. He's
I got Manuel's and Bolger mixed up because there was those two there in the Jag, and then Bagacino in between. All right, back to the front.
Well, here's the difficult part for the field, trying to get through the Casio Triangle chicane side by side, because the pace car peels off pretty early in the piece. Now, when the race finishes, the start-finish line is pretty much right here at the top end of the straight, but it's right down the bottom end of the grid where the green flag is being waved. So the time has already started. The pace car is in pit lane, but they have to wait till they get to this line here before they can launch. And we are away now for 30 minutes of sprint racing here in the GT3 Sprint Series by Antara Resort Style Living. And Pete Savage gets a huge hole shot off the front, but he's a little bit deep into turn one. He's lucky to get away with that. And he starts now his ascent up the S's. Already behind him, Lewis Wedding is putting the screws to Will Devonish and is really hustling the Lamborghini along. Brendan Ross has had a pretty handy start as well. Steve Burko's gone backwards, gents.
Yeah, it's a trio of Nissans holding up the rest of the field while the top three escape away. Devonish was lucky to get the ascendancy through the S's to hold on to his second position, but it's a massive gap at the head of the field as a few cars get sideways through Dunlop Curve coming over the hill. But Peter Savage, as they go through Dengers 1 and 2, holds about a second lead, it looks like, as they come under the bridge on the first lap this evening.
Zach Ross has actually gone ahead of Steve Burko as well. So Burko's had a really poor start, dropped 4 spots already, all the way back to P8. You see the other Bentley tucked in there behind the sister Triple Eight car and just ahead of Luke Joyner's Lamborghini, as well as they go through the hairpin for the first time.
And another one who's had a great start is Steve Bolger. He's up 4 positions from his back of the field start into 17th. But he's still got a fair way to go if he wants to get meaningful points this evening. Very few cars locking up into the first part of Spoon Curve, and Noah Tara escapes the track boundaries.
Oh, Cracker's gone very wide from back there.
I think we'll head back up to where Tara is, because the Tara's going to go side by side down the back straight. This is going to be very tense into 130R.
Greg thinks better of it, and that's probably the smart call. Just manages to fall back into line.
Oh, Burko's got a really good run on Ross behind him, though.
Yeah, Ross has gone immediately to the defensive. They're going to force Burko to go the long way here. Now, he can use his escape road if he outbrakes himself, but he managed to keep it on the tarmac. Drivers have been warned that they can use the escape road if they do outbrake themselves, but provided they slow sufficiently and then cede position. So Greg Tara's trying to put a move on Noah Tara here. Steve Burko was vulnerable out of the chicane.
Moment in the background, Hans Brunswick and Turmo have come together out of the final chicane. It's left the Lamborghini facing backwards in the wall, and he's just returning to the circuit now. It was a bit of a clumsy moment from the pair of them there, and they've sent themselves to the tail of the grid.
All right, here we go. So
Mitch is retired.
The line Mitch is out, so he was one of the ones I was about to say have a little bit of a look for. So Brunswick just got a really good run here, and Turmo was in the grass, and then Hans Brunswick followed him, and then they just really... That's sort of both their faults. Turmo was just trying to go around Cale and Duncan, couldn't quite get the move done, and then Hans Brunswick just tried to take advantage of the situation, just plumb understeered off the road.
Yeah, clumsy from both of them, I think, is the word to go there.
They managed to both have almost identical accidents without even touching each other.
Pretty much.
Just a quick update on Liam Mitch. It looked like a game disconnect for him. He went static coming back onto the main straight and disappeared from the track. So unfortunate for Liam after a good start as well.
Greg Tara's under direct pressure from Zach Ross as they come down towards Spoon Curve. Noah Tara's gotten away from them a bit.
Yeah, he has kicked away a little bit here. So Greg Tara now being the cork in the champagne bottle ahead of Bentley of Zach Ross, and then behind him Steve Burko is just trying to play a little bit of catch up here. This field's starting to string out just a little bit in the back end of the top 10. There is a really huge battle going on at the moment. Rhodey heading a huge number of cars just over the back of the hill, which we'll go back and have a bit of a look at in just a second as the other cars come down to the chicane. Very brief.
Yellow flag
chicane. Very brief yellow flag. What happened? Was it Lewis Wedding?
Lewis Wedding and Will Devonish, both of them.
All right,
Ross
so
has got past them.
Yep. So Brendan Ross has got past him in a heartbeat. So what on earth were these two doing?
Oh no, it was contact. It was contact between the two of them.
Let's go and have a bit of a look at the replay. Here they come. So through the final chicane. So Savage is well clear. And oh yeah, that's on Wedding. That's on Lewis. He made a mistake and did really well at the end of the day to get out of the road of Brendan Ross and lets Devonish go back through. So
something's happened to Noah Tara at a similar time to this as well, because he's back down in 10th.
Yeah, he's gone backwards and been freight trained by, I think Mike Coulston's gone through on him, Zach Ross and even Greg Tara have gone through as well. So Greg Tara's made up a huge amount of ground on Lewis Wedding now too, and he's dragging those couple of Bentleys along with him.
So yeah, to catch everyone up on what happened to Noah, he just got a little bit of a wheel spin moment on the exit of the first part of the chicane, and it sent him off wide drivers right into the gravel. Oh, and Mike Coulston's just gone off with the gravel at Denga 1 and 2, and he's hit the wall hard from 10th position, now dropping through the field.
Yep. Massively dropping through the field. Now we're trying to cycle back to find him. He's all the way back to 16th.
Yeah.
That's split the pack apart a little bit that Rhodey was having. Oh, Mishra sticks his nose down the inside at the hairpin. That's an opportunistic move and not a bad move at all from the rookie.
Cale and Duncan's gone off while that was happening as well.
Yeah, we saw him just on the side.
He was right behind them.
Yeah, doing some mowing of the grass and mowing of and picking up all the dirt on the offset.
Oh, and they made contact, Mishra and Rhodey. Oh, this is an absolute madhouse at the beginning of the race. Just approaching Spoon Curve. Rhodey was on the inside, but they got a little too close for comfort, and it sent Rhodey off into the grass, and he's now plowing through the gravel on the exit of the corner. It's all happening here at Suzuka.
Back at the front, Brendan Ross is now under attack from Will Devonish and Lewis Wedding. They are right up behind him now.
Yeah, they're slowly starting to gain on him as well. The gap out
also,
the front.
Steve Burko's gotten past Zach Ross as well.
The gap out front between first and second was nearly 5 seconds. Or Mishra very deep at the brakes. Rhodey does likewise, goes very deep under brakes into the final chicane, and doesn't put him under any direct immediate threat. That puts Steve Bolger inside the top 10, so he's just been plodding along. A couple of cars falling off the road ahead of him, so from pretty much dead last, actually was dead last, he's now inside the top 10. And he'll get an opportunity to qualify for the second race tonight. So remember, there's a second qualifying session for the second 30-lap encounter. How far can Bolger advance? The next man up the road for him is the green machine of Noah Tara. cycle back toward the front. And here's this battle you were talking about just a few seconds ago, gentlemen. Brendan Ross has now got, well, if two's a company, three's now a crowd. And it's Devonish and Wedding, and Devonish is having a look.
Big dive.
Yeah, Ross
Big
left.
dive from Devonish.
Ross left
takes
him
the high ground.
Yeah, Ross left him some space on the inside, which he probably really didn't need to do, but it's put him on the wrong side for Spoon. And Wedding's going to try and capitalise and probably go with Will here, I think, if Will can make a wedge. And then Wedding will try and slip down the inside. Here he goes. So Ross can't get back across to cover the line, but Wedding is not close enough to get in there and try and follow Will through. So now his next opportunity is to take a bit of a look on the run down to 130R.
It really was very kind from Ross into the hairpin there. He did not have to give that much space. But it looks like he's actually planning on having a go at Devonish as well if he can hold behind him through 130R here.
Lewis had a really good run down to 130R, but he wasn't close enough to send it up the inside before they got to the corner. So he had to roll out of the throttle. Oh, and had an awkward moment over the first part of the chicane as well. The car bounced and wheel hopped, and he's lost touch with them as a result.
This is an opportunity, though, for Ross to stick with Devonish here and put him under pressure. But out front, this is allowing Peter Savage to just do what he does best and hot lap ahead of the field. A 58.7 now the fastest lap of the race. And it's actually Peter Savage's teammate, Steve Burko, who's behind this battle, who's set that one as he's ranged onto the back of Noah Turra. And then further down the field, Bolger goes through and sets the fastest lap of 58.6. So the times are dropping like a stone here as the fast guys come across the line. But it's this battle for second between Will Devonish and Brendan Ross that we've got our eyes on at the moment, and it's a very willing stuff for the pair of them as they begin to leave Lewis Wedding just a little bit behind.
This battle for second place could soon become a six-way battle if these two, Devonish and Ross, keep battling each other, because Wedding dropped back a little bit, but he's already getting right back up behind them, and Greg Tara is being forced by the two loose Sim Sports cars up towards this battle as well.
You'll have a look at the sector times as they start to come in here. So Devonish through the first sector, 49.5, Ross 49.7, Wedding 49.5, Turra 50.1, Burko 50.2.
Oh, the Bowl just had a spin out of Deckner too.
Oh, and then I was about to say, then the last one of those was Zach Ross with a 49.7. But if we go back to see what's happened to Steve Bolger, was he dropping down the order?
He didn't lose a position from it actually, but yeah.
He's lost touch. So there he goes, up the hill out of the hairpin. So a bit too far forward now to pick up the replay of that, but that's incentivised Dujit Mishra behind to try and latch onto the back of this Jaguar. The different strengths and weaknesses with the rest of the, with all the cars that are in this top sort of, second right all the way through to seventh. And now Wedding's caught back up to the back of Brendan Ross, who's still doing a remarkably good job to hang on to Will Devonish here. Sector 2 times, Devonish with a 45.0. Wedding was a 44.8, so that's what's allowed him to snag back onto the back of this battle as well now. And the fastest lap.
Classic stuff. I think Ross is just a little quicker in the final sector. Something about his braking and his line through 130R allows him to attach himself onto the back of the Lamborghini a bit easier than it is around the other side of the circuit, but especially heading into the hairpin. Ross has been vulnerable first to Devonish last lap around, and then Wedding had another look the lap previous. Wait, I got that the other way around. Anyway, the point is, Ross isn't looking so settled in the middle sector, but the final sector, the Nissan really opens up its legs and allows itself to run a bit freer. Gains a bit more time compared to the two around him. As you can see already, Devonish has just a little bit of a gap with 1 or 2 car lengths coming into the hairpin, and Wedding is a little closer as well in this battle here. And in fact, yeah, you can see again the line. Ross actually runs very wide and just allows the Acura through easy as you like. So it's a bit of a mistake there for Ross, and he's paid the price for it.
Yeah, not happy through that hairpin. And you're right, he does have an advantage on the cars ahead, but it's only in the final sector. It's by 2/10. Properly sorted braking, probably for that final chicane, getting through the chicane nice and cleanly, and then getting good drive off. Whereas it's taking a little bit extra time for people like Will and Lewis to get on the power. Big wiggle from Lewis as they exit Spoon.
And that could leave him vulnerable to Ross, because we've said Ross is quicker through the final sector. This is where the pace really starts to head up the top of the field. Almost flat through 130R. In fact, Ross goes very wide. so he'll have to roll out of that and loses a bit more to the tail of the Acura that time around.
Yeah, he's done the right thing there. Comfortable.
Someone who hasn't lost the tail is Steve Berko on Greg Tara. He has been able to count the amount of rivets on the back of that rear wing for the last 2 or 3 laps, basically.
And here he goes too. He's going to have a look down the inside at turn 1. Steve Berko, is he far enough alongside to send it? Oh, half-hearted attempt. It was a half-hearted attempt. And he comes back at him now. Oh, a little bit of lag going on there as well for Steve Berko. And
that actually dropped him significantly away.
Yeah, it did. So it looked like he had a bit of an attempt there. I'm not sure if that attempt was actually a genuine one now or if it was a lag-induced, but when we saw him come back, he's obviously lost a fair bit of time there too, almost like there was a miniature game freeze or something going on there.
It looks like that's what happened, because he did just essentially jump back, and we have seen that when someone has a game freeze, it essentially holds their car in place and then keeps them going once it reconnects with what's happening. So a bit unfortunate for him, but gives him another shot to come up behind him, because that could have been a fairly severe accident otherwise.
They were giving each other just the very bare minimum of racing room. It was cracking stuff, but yeah, in the end, Berko's got it all to again now, doesn't he?
Yeah, he sure does. Smooth sailing out in front for the race leader, that has to be said, gentlemen. 5.2 seconds, and we've heard Pete Savage is carrying a little bit of an arm injury as well, so a 5-second margin for him is very, very luxurious at the minute.
And he's been metronomic in his pace. All of his laps so far, apart from the opening lap, have been in the the mid 58s or low 59s, except for one, which was a little bit of a moment in the first sector. But he's been able to just plot away out the front and allow the group behind him to battle away, which is exactly what you want, especially when it's Will Devonish, Lewis Wedding and Brendan Ross scrapping for the minors. You prefer them scrapping far away instead of being right on your tail.
No, not wrong there. We go a bit further down the order. Let's have a look at some of the other battles starting to unfold. Here's another one with the 2 Termo engineering cars, Rhodey and Termo, just mixing it up a little bit with Caelan Duncan, and Rhodey has managed to get through there and just hang on for the moment. Be remiss of us not to mention that this man was the birthday boy yesterday. I'm not sure how old he is. Actually, I know he's younger than me. That's about all I do
23,
know.
he was
23,
saying.
there we go. So a big happy birthday to Rhodey, and F's in the chat would be appreciated.
Beautiful.
Well, he's currently under attack from Caelan Duncan, so there may be some more Fs in the chat. If he gets passed by him here, that won't be a very happy birthday present. Caelan Duncan has some decent pace. I saw him just a bit earlier following Cracker, and Cracker had a spin in front of him, and Caelan very deftly avoided him and continued on.
He's put up a good defence there so far, Rhodey. 2:03.4 his last lap. Duncan with 2:04.0 there. These two are no strangers to each other, having raced in Super 2 and that as well.
And is passing Luke Joyner in the S's.
Yeah, I was just about to say the same thing, Bagsy. Bolger seemed to have a massive pace advantage over Joyner. I'm not sure if Joyner's had a problem or something, but yeah, just absolutely breezed by the Lamborghini without any issue.
Bolger actually has some immense pace, and keep in mind he did start essentially at the back of the field. I think he started in 21st actually. He was
dead last.
He was absolutely dead last. So he's up 12 positions to 9th. He's only 25 seconds off the leader despite that. And we saw, even though, and this is including a spin, I think if he hadn't had that spin, he'd probably already be ahead of Noah Tara and starting to threaten Zach Ross. So if you take off at least 7 or 8 seconds of that spin, he is still very much in it. And I think once he can qualify for the next race, he'll be one to look out for.
He's flying solo this round as well. Normally Matt Schwass is out there in the other Gravel Rash racing car, but not tonight. Not sure what's happened to Matt.
Manuel Santino's in that car. As we watch, got eyes on Berko and Tara going through the chicane side by side. Berko actually managed to hang around the outside to take 5th position there.
Very nice move by Steve Berko. It's just at the last
not
part
done
of the
yet,
chicane.
though,
It's not done.
Greg Tara had a much better run out of the second part of the chicane because Berko's run was compromised, but he is behind, so Berko's really got the line through the corner here. Who's going to hold on better? Berko's really compromised his line there, but it's all S's after this. It's very hard to get past, so job done by Steve Berko for now.
Finally consolidates 5th place, gets the move done at the end of lap 8, and they head up the S's on lap number 9. Will Devonish has just broken the back of Lewis Wedding and Brendan Ross for the moment, so he's kicked away to the tune of about a second and a half, and now out in pursuit of Pete Savage. And we've just got a lap runner here, which is Cracker. And
Cracker,
Wedding
yeah.
wide in the back of shot. Brendan Ross too. They're both very, very wide. And Wedding loses third place to the FCR Motorsport Nissan. Now, Cracker's the lap traffic. He was actually in the pit lane, so I think probably repairing a bit of damage from an off-track excursion somewhere. But he's safely out of the way.
Yeah, there's spin coming out turn 1.
Now, Will's got 12.5 minutes to try and reel this 5-second deficit in, but he's only sort of brought it down by about 3/10 over the last 2 minutes or so. He really hasn't been able to make any huge gains.
It stayed in the 5-second range for essentially the last 3 laps. Since he got past Brendan Ross and Lewis Wedding, it hasn't moved. The needle's remained neutral in that gap. It's been a couple of tenths back and forth between them. But yeah, he's just not able to reel in Peter at the moment.
A couple of battles starting to shape up here, Michael. We've got the battle for third place with Brendan Ross and Lewis Wedding going toe-to-toe, and this battle between Burko and Greg Turrer is certainly not over by any stretch of the imagination.
Nah, Tara hasn't let Burko just skip away just yet. He's really putting the pressure on as they both go just a little deep through the chicane. Bentley versus the Nissan coming onto the main straight. You gotta say, Burko has looked quite pacey behind the Nissan, but now that he's ahead, he hasn't really stretched away just yet. A 2 minutes 0.7 lap for Burko versus a 2:01.0. Remember, there was the pass in that lap last time around, and Greg Turrer goes a little deep into turn 1. It looks like it's just a matter of time, I think, before Burko finally puts it together and breaks the elastic. But with that lap traffic immediately ahead of them, no longer, as Cracker does a very good job of getting out of the way, it could have played a role. But I think Burko now has just got 2 or 3 car lengths away, which is going to enable him to just skip away from Greg and take a bit more of an inroad into the battle for the minor places on the podium. But with only 10 minutes, or just under 11 minutes left, it's a bit of a big gap to reel in, as both Victoria and Burko get a little bit of a swapper out of Dana 2.
The next
Steve
battle...
Bolger.
And Lewis Wedding's just gone back up the inside of Ross. Sorry to interrupt everyone again.
Yep.
Just at the hairpin there.
I was just about to say, Steve Bolger is really closing in rapidly on Noah Turner. It's been almost a second a lap that he's closed up that gap.
That's precisely where I was about to go with the 2. The last lap alone was 0.8 of a second. It was about a 2-minute flat for Noah Tara, and it was a 59.2 for Steve Bolger. So Bolger is not done with passing cars yet tonight. There's at least another one more in his future that he can see anyway.
I'm just going to bring us back up to the battle for third, because Lewis had a massive moment coming out of Spoon, and they're basically nose to tail coming through 130.
There he goes, Rossi. Rossi going to send it at the final chicane if he gets half a chance, and not properly confident to have a real stab at the chicane, but he was mighty close and followed Lewis every inch of the way through 130R, nose to tail.
And there was another little moment for Wedding on the exit of the chicane there. Ross has got another run here coming down the main straight. Reaches down to the inside, and he's going to take the braking zone. Is he able to hold it in there?
Oh, a little
Just
nudge.
goes a little deep. Switchback is on, and Lewis Wedding gets back up the inside. Can he hold it there to take the run through the S's? And he does. He gets back ahead.
Well done. A little nudge from Lewis Wedding just moved the Nissan wide in the first part of the first corner. We just caught it on the broadcast. Rossi had done the right thing, but skated a little bit further into the corner than he ideally would have liked. And the little nudge from Wedding, because he was right there, it was unintentional, but the little nudge that was there was enough to allow Wedding the chance to nip back up the inside and secure it at the second part of the corner.
Rick Turner's decided to prove us fools and is holding on to Steve Burko. That gap has not changed, and Noah Tara is now under attack from Steve Bolger. That gap is now less than a second.
Yeah, Bolger's
and I
basically
point out,
right
Steve
on him.
Bolger, while overtaking all these people, has been closing the gap to Peter Savage at the front. It's still 25, 26 seconds, but it is going down compared to everyone else who's falling behind him.
The margin in front is still slowly coming down, but just not at the rate that Will Devonish needs to be coming down. It's 4.8 seconds now, and that's another 0.2 in the last 2.5 minutes. So it's not. It's inconsequential, basically.
Yeah, it's tenths, not seconds, and Devonish needs seconds if he wants to challenge the Bentley at the moment. On the other hand, Wedding Ross still close enough to be close-ish contact. Burko and Tara are the next 2 cars down the road, and then Zach Ross A bit of a lonely race since being dropped by Burko, and now Bolger's right on the tail of Noatara, heading down towards 130R. In fact, he's pushing the Nissan down the back straight, coming over the east circuit.
He's got the high ground here. He's going to try and he's going to make Noatara narrow the corner up, which is going to give him a huge run off of 130R. But can he do anything with it? No, Noatara defends really, really well. So tried to outthink him there, tried to make him take a lot slower approach to the corner because he wasn't in the right spot to take maximum speed through the corner, and it nearly worked, but Noah did superbly well there.
That GTR has excellent mid-corner speed there through 130R, as Bolger's going to have another go into the first corner. He's just got, compared to the Jaguar, that was a lot more mid-corner speed because Bolger had the optimum line through 130R there, and the power didn't go down like it did for Noatara, even though he had that compromised line through there. That was quite incredible.
I think Bolger's being fairly conservative as well. He's taking a lot of early braking points, rolling out of the throttle, it appears, especially at turn 1 there, that last lap around. So maybe Bolger isn't quite as comfortable racing around other cars as he is.
Oh, Tara very wide. Noatara very wide, and he's seated position straight away. So, but just biding his time with Steve Bolger there. We were just riding on board with the bumper cam for a bit, and then Noatara went out of shot, just understeered wide through Dunlop, and that's all it took, and the Gravel Rash Racing Jaguar is through.
And then he didn't have to battle the Nissan for too long because the Nissan made its mistake. Now, the next target for Bolger will be Zach Ross, and that's 5 seconds up the road. So with just under 6 minutes, 20 seconds left, it's going to be very close to see if Bolger can make another position. But either way, 13 positions up in a single race from the rear of the grid is an impressive result, regardless of his endeavours to try and get further up. So just not something to frown at for Bolger if he ends in 8th place.
Yeah, probably drive of the day in this particular race so far, to just bide his time, very, very cleanly pick his way through the field.
Leaf Cracker has had a large accident somewhere. I'm not sure if and to be honest, this may just be my game showing this, but the entire front of his car is missing.
Yeah,
Still driving though.
You can see all the way through to his front, his legs
You
there.
can see his feet there.
It's the front end and on the Mike Coulston Acura NSX missing as well. One of the 2 Antara Resort Style Living cars that are in the race as well. Mike Coulston being down the order in 15th, but being represented pretty well by Lewis Wedding up in 3rd place, but he still has not been able to shake Brendan Ross.
Yeah, the top 4 cars are doing pretty identical lap times at the moment. Well, last lap around, Wedding and Brendan Ross, a 2-minute flat 0.2 versus 2-minute 0.0 for those 2 cars. And then if we look at the gap further up the field between Devonish and Peter Savage, it's been coming down in little bites, but really it's been a tenth a lap. I think the last 3 laps, the biggest difference has been 0.3 of a second. That was the last lap around. So maybe as the tyres begin to wear off a little bit, we'll see a bigger discrepancy between those 2 cars. But Peter Savage, he's had nothing really to worry about so far this race. In fact, the closest battle at the moment isn't in this top 4. It's in fact, again, Greg Tara and Steve Burko,
Yeah, just behind this pairing.
We've got 4.5 minutes left, but Steve Bolger took half a second out of Zach Ross in the first sector of this lap alone.
Yeah, that's mega. Actually, yeah, it's 49.9 to Zach Ross's 50.593, so it's nearly borderline 6/10 of a second. So that margin is just under 5 seconds with still plenty of time to go. Both.
Also, speaking of which, Will Devonish took half a second out of Peter Savage in the second sector as well. So that gap that was pretty consistent at 5 seconds is now 3.5.
Wondering if it's a fatigue thing starting to set in for Pete Savage. It was a pretty poor sector. It was at 45.6. It's not stellar, and the final sector was a further 0.2 differential. So Will Devonish just chopped out 0.8 of a second on the last lap alone of Pete Savage's advantage. So there's not a great deal of space left on track between these two. Will be able to see him, and no doubt Pete will be able to see that the Wedding Crashers Lamborghini is coming, and probably in a big hurry now too.
In other gaps that are going down at ridiculous speed, Bolger then took another 0.7 of a second in Sector 2 and 0.2 in Sector 3. So that last lap, he was almost 2 seconds a lap faster, second and a half faster that lap. But he is in visual range now.
Yeah, sure is. Burko's doing what he can to break Greg Tara's spirits. He's just started to kick away again. Looks like we're going to get another 2 laps out of this at least. 50 seconds remaining, and there's probably the better part of about a minute left in this lap. So they'll get to the line with less than 2 minutes on the clock. So there will be, this will be the last time lap, and then the white flag will be out. Will be 16 laps will be the duration of this one.
Yeah, that gap at the front is still coming down. The top 2 are at the moment are the only ones within the 59s, except for Steve Bolger as well. So that's where the pace is at the moment, as the leaders are coming through 130R in just a moment, using all the road, and then just a little bit more and for Peter Savage. But Devonish looks very much on it in the Lamborghini, not looking like he's suffering from any problems at all as he comes through the chicane. That gap visually has gotten a lot closer. It's currently sitting at just under 2.9 seconds. We'll get an update as they come across the line.
59.8 that time around, and versus a 59.0. So there's another 0.8 of a second gone. So Will's got 2 more laps to get this done.
I think it's not going to be enough. He has to get to him and then pass him. And I think Savage is just letting off the gas a little bit as well, maybe giving Devonish some false hope.
Maybe trying to encourage him into making a mistake by pushing too hard. Yeah, Savage hasn't really had any problems, any issues throughout the race. He's had a very clean race. He's been able to do it at all his own pace. But remember, Devonish had to fight his way through Lewis Wedding and Brendan Ross at the start. I remember he was all involved in that little incident, the hairpin as well. So he might just be a little hot under the collar, which sometimes can help you out there. So go ahead, Bagsy.
Steve Bolger took 3 seconds off Zach Ross in the last lap.
Wow.
He's now directly behind him. There is no gap anymore.
Here he is on screen as well. So this is another position that's going to likely change hands in the next 2 or 3 minutes, because they've got a lap and a half.
I think it's going to change hand going. I think it's going to change hand going into the hairpin, to be honest.
Either that or the next one it'll be up to Spoon. I think will probably where it might change. If Bolger can get a good run out or out of Degner, there was a big moment there for Zach Ross, a huge lock up ahead. That's going to put the blinkers on for Steve Bolger. I think he'll probably bide his time here and try and get a good run off the hairpin and maybe get him up into Spoon, which is precisely what he does. Narrows it up on the exit, gets really good drive off. Here he is from the roof cam in the real tracks. Probably not close enough to send it.
Realistically, he knows he's not going to gain any more positions apart from this one, so he can bide his time, get him up the hill towards 130R or under braking the chicane, because he just has so much more pace. Look at that.
He certainly does. White flag is out. Pete Savage is just inside of the finish line now, so it is 1 more lap to go. So well timed for Pete Savage. The gap is visual. It's down to 2.5 seconds, but it might not be more than enough. Bolger has a bit of a look at the inside of Zach Ross going into 130R. But he'll get 1 more lap to have a couple of pings at the back of the 888 Bentley Continental.
Tara is right on the back of Steve Burko as well. And he's actually making a move down into turn 1. Is he going to be able to make it stick this time?
Oh, he is. He's going to get the job done. He's going to make Burko run the outside line, but Burko's looking for the undercut. He's looking to come back down the inside, and this is going to give Tara the inside for the next corner, but Burko is ahead. Burko is ahead. And that means that Burko made a mistake somewhere in that particular lap, and it was in the final sector. He dropped
not by much.
Only
2 tenths.
But it was a good lap behind from Greg Tara as well. He was 5 tenths quicker alone on that lap. Going a bit further up the order, Brendan Ross has just started to lose touch with Lewis Wedding at the wrong time. Just in the last couple of laps. Wedding is very wide though.
Yeah, as you say that, Lewis had a massive moment in Degner 2.
Yeah, a huge moment in Degner 2. Just starting to push a little bit too much. Maybe the tyres are starting to go away. The gap at the front still coming down, but it's not going to come down enough. Greg Tara still can't find a way through on Steve Burko. And looks like Zach Ross has just managed to get a car length or 2 on Steve Bolger, but that's certainly not over and done with. We'll keep an eye on that. Let's go and look at our race leader, because he's going to get across the line, barring any trouble, and pick up his 2nd win of the campaign, although he's a bit wide at the final corner. But Will's just equally as wide, and Savage is going to hang on. So Savage will
Very-
hold on and get another win for Bentley and Loose Sim Sport, and very well earned. Got out in front and just managed the gap to the end. So that 5-second gap was more than enough at the end of the day. Job well done.
Congratulations, Peter Savage. Will Devonish takes second place for the first race this evening. Lewis Wedding is going to come across the line to finish a very valiant third in the Acura, the Loose Sim Sport Acura. Peter Savage, Brennan Ross across the line fourth. And Burko and Noah.
Big crash. Ross and
Big
Ross
crash at the final
Bolger.
chicane. Big crash at the final chicane. That's Zach Ross and Steve Bolger. So I think Bolger's probably had a move or attempted to make a move somewhere.
Yeah.
And hasn't been able to get it stopped in time. So here it is from the broadcast cameras into the final turn. So Bolger was chasing, all late move, and locked it up, and yeah, a bit of a coming together there, and then coming back onto track. So fair enough, Bolger has given the place back.
He almost then lost the place to Noatara as well.
Yep, so Bolger finishes in 8th, Noatari finishes 9th, and Luke Joyner will get home inside the top 10, chased by Termo.
Battle for position 12th and 13th. Kalen Duncan around the outside of Hans, around the
he's
chicane.
got the high ground here.
It's going to be side by side. It's going to be a drag race onto the main straight. McLaren versus Lamborghini. Big swap from Brunswick, but he manages to hold on to take 12th place. So a little bit of excitement at the very end for us there in the minors. Mike Coulston comes across in 14th. Then it will be Rody, the birthday boy.
Brody and Bagacino very 15th. Close as well.
Yeah, that's a surprise.
A fight right to the very end.
It looks like
Bagacino.
Urjit Mishra has had an issue somewhere. He's dropped down several places from where he was.
Yeah, he had a really bad first sector.
On the beginning of the last lap, I noticed that just on the timing screen as the leaders were coming through.
And the lap before that was terrible as well. It was a 2:29 the lap prior, so he had a massive issue somewhere on that particular lap and just dropped a bunch of spots.
Yeah, unfortunate, because he was definitely on the outside of the top 10 there, looking for a good result. That was the first race here tonight. I think it's 19 finishes out of the 21 cars, and action-packed from start to finish, lads.
Yeah, sure was. That was a hugely impressive run from Pete Savage, and I think we're just trying to drag him up into the box now to see if we can and have a chat with our race winner. Might get Bagsy to have a bit of a yak to Pete Savage about how he controlled that race pretty much from the get-go.
Yeah, for certain race winner, Pete Savage, second race winner of the season, one of only two people. I'm sure you'll be glad to have got a pole position and been able to maintain the race win without having Will Devonish get past you.
Yeah, that was a bit of an interesting race. I am sorry if I did screw everyone over at the start. I actually got called to go have dinner right as the briefing started, so I missed the entire thing, and I think I took a little bit too long to get off the line, which made everyone else bottle up a little bit. But wasn't too bad. I started having a little bit of a problem with my hand at the end of that race, so I did back off quite a bit. But that doesn't take anything away from Devonish. He really made me have to put the pedal back down to make sure I stayed ahead of him.
Yeah, we did see that you got, after that start, you just stayed ahead of everyone. Were you sort of waiting to see who was going to come out on top and who was going to try to close the gap, or were you just focusing on doing a laps? We saw, I think you ended up with the third fastest lap of the race, but you were quite consistent throughout the race.
Yeah, I don't honestly reckon I had too much race pace in the car compared to what I obviously got out of it at qualifying. But yeah. That was still a really good drive. I tried as hard as I could out there and got the win, so I can't really ask for much more than that.
Yeah, it was a very well-controlled race from the front. Second place, Will Devonish, who was battling quite hard with Brendan Ross and Lewis Wedding for the first part of the race and let Peter Savage get ahead. Towards the end of the race, Will, saw you closing in. Did you think you had a shot at it, or were you just sort of praying for a mistake there from Peter Savage?
I thought I had a shot if there was 3 more laps in it, but there wasn't. So I know with Pete, once he gets a bit of a lead, he's very good at getting in the zone. which it was clearly there. And we were just lucky the car sort of came back to us towards the end of the race, so we were able to sort of catch up to him. But yeah, really good effort by Pete. We had a messy first few laps that we need to sort out next race, and hopefully it'll be a bit more competitive.
We did see that your Lamborghini does seem to have, it was a bit twitchy towards the start. Is that just on the high fuel load, the car's a bit different, or is that a way you've set it up intentionally?
It's very much set up that everything comes up to temperature about 7 laps in. So it's sort of just fighting the car the first few laps to get it to that point, and then it's really nice after that.
We'll go on race in second. Third place, Lewis Wedding, who was having to battle for most of that time, really. You had quite a good battle with Will and Brendan Ross. Were you worried about Brendan Ross towards the end of the race there?
A little bit. Obviously we were battling all race long there, but it seemed I did make a couple mistakes, like just little minor ones, which sort of kept him close. But I always seemed to edge away. So I was worried, but I wasn't really too worried the last couple laps because it looked like he was struggling just a little bit.
I think it was 2 or 3 times you're having moments out of Degner too. Is that just one of those corners that it's just getting in there a bit fast and the power doesn't quite go down, or was that more just due to perhaps losing a bit of attention going through there?
It's just I think just the nature of the corner, as well as the car. To get this car to sort of work a little bit, you sort of have to move the brake bias a bit to the back. So you're already coming in a little bit skatey. And if you get it wrong, or if you sort of clip the curb on the outside as you turn in, it just undersettles the rear. And then at the same time, you want to get the power down nice and early to get a good exit. And because it's cambered, you can do it. But as the race progressed, it was a little bit more difficult because the rear tires in this car were garbage after 4 or 5 laps. They were overheating, and at the same time they were wearing out pretty quick. So I was last half of that race I was just hanging on.
Do you reckon there'll be anything you can do to change that for race 2, or is it just going to be sort of deal with it and try your best moving on?
I'll chuck some setup changes on the car and see what they do. Whether they work or not, I don't know. I don't think they'll work all that much. But change the camber, roll bars or something, and who knows? Maybe the car will come alive, or maybe we'll just make it understeer and lose a bit of pace. But either way, I'll give it a crack, and hopefully we can go better next time. But probably not. The rear tires on this car can't last quite as well as certainly the front 2 cars at the moment anyway.
We look forward to seeing how those setup changes work, and hopefully they bring you for a fight for that top position. Thank you very much to our top 3.
Yeah, congratulations to the top 3. It's the second win out of 5 races for Pete Savage, so gets one more back on Will Devonish. Those 2 gentlemen, the only 2 drivers to have finished on the podium in all 5 of the races that have been contested so far. So up the pointy end, fighting away, which is good. And to do it with a little bit of an injury as well makes it all the more special for Pete there, I think, gents.
Yeah, it certainly seemed didn't necessarily seem easy, even though he had the run of the mill through most of the race. It looked like he was struggling towards the end of the race, and even said that to us. So hopefully he's able to keep it up for the second race. Hopefully another pole start will work him out nicely. But yeah, battles throughout the field as well. So maybe if he's not quite able to get as good a start, we might see a bit more willing battling throughout the pack.
Yeah, we might actually see a bit more willing, I guess, battling throughout the pack. I mean, we're just waiting on a couple of drivers to jump back in for the second race tonight, and then we've actually got a second qualifying session we have to go through as well. But what are you most looking forward to about this next one? Given there's a couple of drivers that did have some penalties that had to start from the back of the grid, and one being Lime Mitch, the other being Steve Bolger. Now these 2 get the opportunity to qualify for the second race tonight. Does that throw some spanners into the mix here?
I think certainly Bolger having a qualifying session is going to throw the cat amongst the pigeons in the front group. He was by far most consistently the fastest on track throughout the race. It was just a shame that he started from so low down in that first race. But Lion Mitch as well, we saw him have an internet disconnect on the first lap as well. So maybe he might have something in his back pocket that we haven't yet seen, because we haven't seen him qualify, we haven't seen him do a race lap yet. So maybe Lion Mitch might be able to challenge the leaders as well. So he could have maybe a 6 or 7 car leading pack throughout this second race. But you've got to say that the first race tonight was certainly had its intrigue, especially around that, positions 2 and 3 and 5 and 6 sort of area with the battles between the Loose Sim Sport guys and the Torres and Will Devonish and Lewis Wedding as well.
Basically, for a little while in that race, sort of through the mid part, we were actually kind of hoping that the battle for second, third, and fourth was going to start to drag the likes of Steve Burko and Greg Turr up, and it was going to be like a 6-car train, but it never really eventuated. Do we have a shot at seeing something like that happening in this particular race with now some of these other faster guys up the front?
I think we've got the potential with especially Steve Bolger going to be back in the mix, because I think he has easily the potential to get a pole here and be the first person who isn't named Devonish or Savage to get one. And because he was very fast, he was a lot faster than I expected him to be coming from the back of the grid. It was a very good drive, and if I was going to give a drive of the day, it would be that one through the field there. Apart from that small mistake at the end, which was really, you're going to do that last lap lunge, aren't you? It's going to be very good to see how he goes, because I think there could be a genuine battle between him and Savage, Devonish, and Wedding. Hopefully, Wedding's setup changes help as well. Yeah, plenty of things that will be a bit different here, and I think the more people, even though it's the fast people at the front, the more of them collected together at the front, the more chance they're going to be holding each other up and pushing them back into some of the people whose pace might be a bit slower, but can still get ahead. We saw Noah Tara back in round 1 in Okayama, only 3 hours down the road from this track, that if one of those people like Noah Tara, Greg Tara, those who just below that top tier get into the front, they can hold it pretty well and have the potential for a win when all these really fast guys behind them are knocking each other back and forth and taking time off each other.
Yeah, I was just about to echo your point there. We saw, I think, Greg Turra had the top lap in practice, but couldn't quite convert in qualifying. Now, imagine if he does on this one-shot qualifying for the second race and acts as a bit of a cork in the bottle for the rest of the field. We could see a 7, 8, 9 car leading pack almost, if that eventuates. On the other hand, I do just maybe want to put a question mark around Bolger, because we saw as he came through the field, he got very nervous and very conservative around other cars. I wonder if there might be a bit of a mental change there after getting a penalty for 3 warnings in last event's proceedings out at the bend. We saw Bolger, Savage, and Lion Mitch have a very willing battle throughout the second race, which resulted in a lot of contact. So I wonder if he's just being a bit more conservative while around other cars, and whether or not that might play into the results and into the racecraft in that second race if he's able to qualify at the front. It's going to be a very interesting sequence of events potentially. And let's not forget, in between now and then, we have another one-shot qualifying to set the grid for race 2.
I think even if he's being a bit more cautious, see if he's battling for that win up the front, the caution part of your brain might just be switched off slightly.
Well, yeah, you'd hope so. Well, we saw that though at the end of the last race when he switched off the caution part of his brain and cleaned up Zach Ross in the final chicane. So maybe that might have awoken something in him. Maybe we'll get the Jaguar that is Steve Bolger trying to carve his way through the field at the end of the race.
It looks like people seem to fear Hans Brunswick's
potential
for the next race, because a 255 kilogram penalty has been applied. So they're going to get one average American and put them in the car with him.
Yeah,
and he'll be. And then actually, it looks like it has been removed. So they decided it would be too cruel, and Hans will have no weight penalty.
Yeah, I was about to say there's a little bit of shenanigans that like to go on in the chat, which we're not opposed to any of that. We like seeing some of the shenanigans that go on from time to time. It's just sometimes they just tend to add weight penalties mid-corner to people. So
beautiful thing.
It's a beautiful thing. It's like we were talking about this in the chat before the race. One of the old Shannon's ads. It's love, pure and simple.
Pure and simple. Beautiful. Love it. Love to see it. Looks like we are missing.
We're missing Cracker.
Bagaccino.
We're missing
Oh,
Cracker,
Cracker?
at the moment. So he is missing from proceedings, and I believe Bagaccino probably is as well.
No, he's managed to sneak his way back in as we just look to start qualifying for the second race once again. 20 drivers in this qualifying session for this time around. Let's hope that we get to see a few more drivers complete laps. We might see maybe a bit more conservative runs from the likes of Termo and Brian Walsh and Rhodey. Well, no, Rhodey got a lap in. Those who missed out on getting a lap in because of track limits violations or other reasons, mistakes, etc., might be just a little more conservative just to make sure that they get on the grid for this one, as it's Ujit Mishra who is the first car on track yet again.
Yep, and then closely followed by Termo. Well, there's a bit of an interesting conundrum, I guess, then, isn't it? Because the two guys that were on track to begin with, the two guys that are out of Hans Brunswick's in there behind Termo at the minute, but Mishra, I think, is quite a substantial distance up the road ahead of these guys, and yeah, he is. He's about another 4 or 5 seconds up the road from Termo. So, what can the rookie do this time now that he's going to run around? He's not going to have a car to run into. Daylight qualifying, and then the afternoon into dusk race number 2 to follow. That was an interesting dynamic. I quite liked how the darkness sort of descended a little bit in that last race, gentlemen. It did add a bit of more of an unusual dynamic, maybe with a few drivers maybe being caught out a bit by the change in conditions. It got to the point where you could drive, but you didn't need the headlights to run. Maybe a few mistakes tend to sort of creep in the dull conditions.
It definitely changes where you're looking for your turn-in points and your braking points, even though you're most likely not using shadow. You'd hope you're not using shadows for your braking points, given their changing nature. But just the fact that the shadows start to appear across the circuit, the lighting on where you'd normally brake changes a bit, and it can definitely throw you off a little bit. You see it getting very difficult as it gets dark. When you only have your headlights to illuminate, it's even worse. But even those twilight, even just having the sun in your eyes a bit can affect where you're braking.
And I'm not sure about you guys, but I tend to find that dusk is one of the most difficult times to drive because it's just bright enough to see color around, but not quite bright enough that you can really discern where you're going. So you kind of get tunnel visioned into what you're seeing with your headlights. So maybe that might be an effect for these drivers in this second race, as we've got the first flying laps underway. Ujit Mishra just through turns 1 and 2 now and into the S's in the Porsche.
Yeah, heading up the hill now through sector 1. And you're right about dusk being one of the most dangerous times to drive, not just a race car, but in real life as well. It is one of the most dangerous times, especially in the outback or in regional areas where it's a time where animals start to make their way onto the track. Places like Bathurst, we've seen that time and time again with kangaroos and things like that coming out onto the circuit in those sorts of conditions during events like the 12-hour, just as it's the opposite end of the scale. Just as the sun starts to come up, creatures start to, I guess, awaken and can be easily stirred up, and it's no different in the dusk conditions as well. Thankfully, the game doesn't give us any of that sort of real thing, but I guess it's just a reminder about safe driving at the right times as well.
Absolutely right. Now the first sectors in for Mishra and for Brunswick. Brunswick at the moment with the fastest first sector time of 50.8. Remember, we were seeing 49s at the head of the field to the first sector in qualifying 1, so I expect that time to be eclipsed as Mishra just exits Spoon Curve and heads down the Western Straight towards 130R. We'll get a second sector mark in just a moment.
Yep, 37.698 is the time. It's about where he was in the first qualifying session, so it's a 46.5 in the middle sector. Not bad performance from the rookie so far. He's been applying his trade in the Porsche Cup, also in Super 2. Not a bad driver at all. Pretty handy driver, still learning his craft, and going to be a 2:02 again. So it's a little bit slower than what he was in qualifying 1. It was a 2-minute flat in quali 1 and a 2:02.5 in quali 2.
and Hans immediately eclipses that with a 2:01.2. But the first sector to watch has been Noah Tara, 50.2, so not quite at the absolute pace for Nuztuz yet, but it's certainly looking like the early benchmark at this stage, with about half the drivers on their hot lap at the moment.
Yeah, here's another one that's not far away from finishing the hot lap is Kalen Duncan, but he's going to be a mile off the current benchmark times to the tune of nearly 6 seconds, and he's had a pretty poor lap. If we look
First
at
sector.
First sector is where it's done the damage for him with a 55.6.
Noah Tara, though, is 0.6 up on the current pole time coming into the chicane. Very smooth. They had just missed the turning point for the first part of the chicane, so might lose a little bit of time on the faster runners coming later, but it's certainly looking very good for him at the moment coming down the main straight. Could we see him dip into the twos?
It'll be
he's
mid-2.
Mid-2, 2 minutes flat. And Burko, though, has... Burko's just finished his lap. He was the pole time just before Tara crossed the line. So half a second between those two as we're starting to see some of the heavy hitters start their laps at the moment.
We've got Peter Savage is just coming through 130R now, getting ready to start his lap with Brendan Ross just behind him.
Well, this will be an interesting comparison to see if Rossi can use the carrot effect, I guess as we like to call it, and stay with Pete Savage and set a pretty respectable time as the Bentley winds up the big V8 for another assault.
Rossi's definitely going to get the advantage of some slipstream here, though, which will certainly help him on the straights.
Sweep through turns 1 and 2. Both of them pretty nice. A little bit of oversteer for Rossi, though, on the exit there, so he's not quite got the power down. They got some traffic. They've got Lime Mitch, and it looks like Greg Tara up ahead of them just in their eye line, which can be a distraction. They're not quite close enough to really affect them, as I think Lime Mitch ducked out of the way there. But just having them in your eye line can really unsettle you, and both of them both Peter and Brendan Ross, very unsettled on the exit of Dunlop there, getting a bit of wheel spin as they come into the Denga curves.
Let's have a look at the split times as they get down to the first sector. They've done pretty well to negotiate the traffic so far. Very, very cooperative from Lime Mitch. Rossi is up by 3.5 tenths per second on the current pole time.
Peter's up by half a second.
So both of them in the 49.
Oh, and Rossi's had a moment. He's just lit it up on the exit. Tara lets them through, but that's going to let Rossi lose touch with the slipstream for Pete Savage. So his potential shot at a top 2 or 3 row start might have just gone there with that little moment. Although puffs of smoke from the Bentley just ahead of them. Teammate Zach Ross is just ahead of these two on track, and 6 tenths of a second off the current pole time. Gone deep at the final chicane, so that's going to cost him some more time. And he will come to the line. He's going to sort of sit around about the 4th place at the moment, with Ujit Mishra, the man occupying that spot, and he does go 4th, Zach Ross.
In comparison, Peter Savage, 1.3 seconds up to the second sector split, a 44.9 in the middle sector. This is going to be another cracking lap from Savage.
He's going to
as
be
he
straight
comes
to pole
across
position
the line
with this one, and he gets across the line with a 58.8, Ross with a 59.6.
So not quite the same outright pace that we saw from Peter Savage last qualifying session, but certainly good enough at this point to hold on to pole position for the moment. We have Lime Mitch, Greg Tara just starting their fast laps at the moment.
Oh, Devon's just had a moment. Sorry to cut you off, guys. Devon's just had a huge off at the final corner. I was just cycling through to see what happened to him, and here he is. He's backwards facing on the start-finish line. He is not going to be able to set a competitive time here, and he's done this all on his own through the final chicane. So here it is. Was preparing for the lap. I got a funny feeling he's done what Hans Brunswick has done and just got the turning point wrong, and basically did what Hans did on lap 1 of the last race. So that's a huge blow for Will. He's going to be buried in this field.
He might be taking the Bolger strategy, or having to do the Bolger strategy from last race and really fight his way through the field.
I'll have to keep an eye on his lap time just to see how he's going. I wanted to stay with Lime Mitch to see this was a man that I wanted to watch to see how he went and attacked this particular lap. His first sector was not too bad. It was a 49.9, not the fastest we've seen out there, but only 2 tenths away from Pete Savage's time. He did a 49.7 through the first sector.
Greg Tara is just behind Lime Mitch as well on track. They're separated by about 6 seconds, and he was a 50.1 to the first sector, so both of them on a quick lap as well.
50.7 for Will, yeah, that's the bad one. So he's nearly a second already off the pace. Lime Mitch has lost a lot through sector 2, though, but still tracking about being, or if he can maintain this pace, he's going to better Brendan Ross. If not, he's going to be currently P3, which would be handy starting position for this second race. BMW to the 4. Is it going to be a front row potentially, or is it going to be a second row? It is a front row as it stands. Not a bad effort at all. And Greg Turra goes P4.
Nice. Good to see a bit more variety at the top of the field with Lion Mitch and Greg Turra getting in there as well. Steve Bolger is on his lap as well as the time clicks over, so we won't see any more fast laps, I think, except for the ones on laps now. Bolger coming through 130i. He's a second away, so not quite the qualifying pace we were expecting from Bolger after setting some very, very rapid times during the first race.
It's on a par
Bounds
with
over the curbs.
Devenish goes 4th, so drops to 4th with a 1 second off the pace. Rhodey on a lap, Lewis Wedding on a lap, Manuel Centeno not qualifying. Bolger goes P5 by a 10th behind Will Devenish, so that's not a bad result for Bolger. So these guys that we were talking about coming to the front, the likes of Lime Mitch and Steve Bolger, have definitely started to rise up the order. Rhodey on the lap, Wedding not too far behind him. These are the only 2 drivers that are left on the circuit setting times.
And Wedding was in the 49s to the first sector, so that's an indicator of a very, very good lap time as he's oversteering just a little bit, trying to bring the power up on the exit of Spoon Corner.
Yeah, just similar sort of first sector time to Brendan Ross and Lime Mitch was Lewis Wedding with a 49.9. Rhodey tracking sort of to be towards the bottom end, around about 12th, 13th place as it stands right now. Wedding sector 2 time has not flashed up on the screen just yet.
I think he's had a track cut. He must have had a track cut because otherwise it would come through. He's in the last corner now.
Yeah, here he comes now. So Rhodey goes to P15 and Lewis Wedding is going to... No, he goes to 3rd.
Wow, what happened there then? It must have just completely missed his sector.
Yeah, just a delayed timing coming through. So not a bad result at the end of the day for Lewis Wedding as Rhodey pulls the Xbox car to a stop.
12 thousandths of a second behind Lime Mitch for the front row of the grid.
So not a bad result at all. So Pete Savage out in front again. 0.7 of a second at the end of the day, if you don't mind. But then behind him, the battle was on. Lime Mitch, Lewis Wedding, and Brendan Ross, all within a 0.1 of a second of each other. So that's a really good result. And then back to Will Devenish and Steve Bolger. So those 2 are going to share a row on row 3. With Greg Turra, Noah Turra, Burko behind them, I believe, as well. So not a bad way to wrap up the second qualifying session, Bagsy.
Yeah, it was not bad at all. Apologies for not being too active in the latter part of that qualifying. My dog threw up on the floor by my feet. So not an ideal commentary space to be in. But yeah, we should say Lime Mitch with a brilliant lap there. We're expecting him to be up there. Steve Bolger in 6th, not quite what we expected, but it is one-shot qualifying. It's very difficult to get your perfect lap in. It's a lot easier when you've got a 10-minute session where you can just keep pumping laps in, even if one might get buggered up. You've got, the average of your laps is generally going to be a pretty good one in there somewhere. So 6th place, I think Bolger can definitely challenge for a win there. See the 2 Taras down 7th and 8th. They've still ended up next to each other. It just seems to be magnetically attracted on the track. And yeah, Lime Mitch, once again, we thought that he might be able to put something good in, and he really has.
Yeah, I think Lime Mitch is probably the surprise for that qualifying session for me. On the other hand, Bolger is another surprise. I would have expected him to be a bit further up. Will Devenish was extremely lucky to get away with only a minor hit to his lap time after that spin coming on to start his lap. I don't know how he managed to wind up to still qualify in 5th position. We have seen Will do some amazing things in the GT3 World Series in recovering from early spins or mistakes. to come and challenge for the wins of the race. So I have no doubt that he will be able to still challenge for the victory tonight in this second race. But certainly a heart and mouth moment seeing the Lamborghini facing backwards on the main straight just before the start of what would have been his only time lap.
Yeah, and that's an unusual mistake, I guess we call it, isn't it? It's not something that we're used to seeing Will do, especially on a qualifying lap. So that's probably put him on the back foot a little bit. We probably would have expected him to be maybe front row with Pete Savage again. But row 3 is not the end of the world, but it's the company that he's keeping that I think is the worry for him. So Pete Savage out in front. Lime Mitch, who we know is quick and can really send it, he's just sort of got to taper the aggression a little bit, if anything, of the last race meeting in GT3s was to go by. Bolger alongside him, Lewis Wedding in there as well, and Brendan Ross, who's been the surprise packet, I think, tonight as well, been really fighting tooth and nail to try and get that elusive podium. And look, I'd like to see him do it. I'd like to see him really hang on to the coattails of the top guys here and start to mix it up at the back end of the race. If he can just smarten that car up a little bit. We saw in that first race, he just started to lose touch with Lewis Wedding over the last 5 or 6 minutes of that race. If he can smarten that car up, he's a danger to some of these guys in the top half a dozen spots at the moment.
Oh, absolutely. And we saw something similar for Noah Tara at Okayama. All it takes is 1 or 2 mistakes from the top guys and you can be played right into the mix. And Rossi almost had that chance last time out, but fingers crossed he can really get in the mix starting from 4th keep hammering away at those top guys throughout the second race.
Well, while we wait for the session to tick over, Bagsy, we might have a bit of a look at the sprint calendar, because after this race that's about to start in the next few minutes, we are halfway through this little miniature season, and, well, we're back to Australia after this one, and it's a circuit close to my heart because I go there often enough, but I reckon the Phillip Island round might be one of the most hotly contested rounds given the nature of the circuit.
And most likely a circuit that a lot of the people in AMS Oz probably know the best, potentially. It's Suzuka. This one might be the one that is known the best, potentially. But Phillip Island is, for a lot of these guys, a local track. For those who live in Victoria, one that they've most likely been to and actually got to see. And even not necessarily if they're local, it's one of those places that a lot of people go to see MotoGP or go for a track day. So it'll be interesting to see how the local knowledge plays into it.
I completely agree. It's been home to rounds of the Australian GT Championship before in real life, so it's no stranger to GT machinery. And the Island Magic round usually sees the trophy class cars as well going around too. So all sorts of GT3 and endurance machinery have graced the island in the past and will do so into the future. And then just 2 more after that. Off to the Middle East for another one of these dusk events. That one at Bahrain is actually going to be a night event. The circuit is floodlit from its Formula 1 days and it looks magnificent under floodlight. So be prepared for a no headlight running group of cars, but it's certainly going to be hotly contested in the pitch black night with the floodlit circuit, and then Road Atlanta to finish everything off at the end of September. And then we're going to have a little bit of a lull. There's another series that we're trying to get up and running with GT3s. We're just waiting to finalise on a couple of the details, and then we'll be able to formally announce those as well. But we're not too far away from helping us reach the halfway point in the season in just a couple of moments' time. I think we're just missing one person. I think has just dropped out just in the last few seconds. I know Manuel Centino has gone, and I think Ujit Mishra. We're just waiting for Ujit to come back into the server, and then we'll be right to go.
Yeah, fingers crossed we get treated to as much of an action-packed race in this second outing this evening as we did in the first one. Hopefully we get to see a few more compound battles of many cars as opposed to the always exciting but kind of binary 2-car skirmishes. Who's your pick for the race win in the second race this evening, guys? Who do you reckon?
I'm pondering. I don't know, Bagsy. Have you got? It's hard to go past the two that have shared the wins so far, but I do like a roughie, and I'm just trying to work out who that roughie is. I think it's going to be in the top half a dozen cars. We're going to see the winner, though.
I would say that anyone in the top 9, maybe not I, maybe not Steve Berko, but I think anyone in the top 8 cars has potential to win this, because we've seen that when we have a close race at the front, these guys absolutely battle with everything, and mistakes do get made. People get pushed out wide, and anything. If it depends, if Peter gets a good start and Lime Mitch comes second, Lime Mitch can definitely hold up the likes of Wedding and Ross and Devonish for a little bit, potentially enough for Peter to get out that lead and maintain it. We saw, the thing is, we saw he's carrying that hand injury. It's going to be quicker. It's going to come on quicker, the potential downsides for that. We saw him back off towards the end of the first race. Especially when it comes to the pain, he's just done a race, 2 qualies in a race, whereas the start of the previous race he'd only done a quali session and some practice. So just the amount of time that he's put in tonight will start to weigh on him a bit, so we might see him dropping off sooner. So it's all about, for Peter to win, I think he needs to be able to get out front early, have the people behind him battle, and be able to do what he did last race and maintain, and then just slowly let them come back to him. But it's going to be very interesting to see. If he doesn't, then we'll definitely see in 5th. He's in a prime position to potentially be in a first lap incident on that first corner.
Yeah, it's certainly a worry as the field files through that awkward double right-hander. I'm actually going to throw a little bit of love Lime Mitch's way. I think complete contrary to what you were just saying about Peter Savage and how he might be suffering a bit of fatigue because of that injury that he's carrying. Lime Mitch, on the other hand, has done a grand total of 3 laps tonight, I think.
About that.
Barely anything in the practice server. Didn't do qualifying because of a penalty in the first from last round. DQ or disconnected on the first lap, so he'll be very fresh and definitely raring to go. So I think if he's able to finagle his way into the lead, it might be a difficult position to uproot him from for the second race. But yeah, I think that would be my roughie, to use Nether's terminology there. Lime Mitch for me.
Also, yeah. I just realised that in all that, I never actually specified which person I thought was going to win. I just said that maybe Peter's going to win. I actually think Bolger's going to win from 6th.
There you go. Yeah, just looking at going back to your pick here, Floody. Lime Mitch, he's had, out of the 5 races that he's run in, he's actually run only 3 of them. It was a DNF from the last race. He didn't start the second race of Okayama, but his results after that were 4th, and you guessed it, 4th. So they're his 3 finishing positions in the 3 races that he has finished in GT3 Sprint Series so far this year. We take a look to his other GT3 exploits, so the last round of the World Challenge, where he did run, and his last 2 finishes there at Monza and Watkins Glen were, do you want to have a guess?
4th?
I'm going to take a stab at 4th.
4th, yeah, 4th and 4th.
Hey!
And then his last win actually came at the Bathurst Super 2 round, about a month ago was actually his last win. So if you're talking wants to break the hoodoo in GT3s, he's going to do it somewhere. He's probably going to do it tonight, I guess, and he's on the front row, so prime position to actually have a red-hot crack at not just a podium, but a win here.
It would certainly come a little bit out of left field, especially considering the results. We have another reset to the server. What's going on this time?
Yeah, I think there's 1 or 2 drivers that have just had some trouble. I know Ujit Mishra, it looks like he just came back in. Yeah, a couple of drivers just starting to have some trouble, I think. Just prolongs the night a little bit. Lewis Wedding setting the grid. Yeah, Kalen Duncan left he was starting at the back anyway, but he left the game just as the session ticked over. So hopefully not a sign of things to come. Of course, the one thing that is a sign of things to come, and something we're very much looking forward to, is this thing. The Bathurst 500. Less than 3 months away now, so a number of our very quick Kiwis across the ditch are gearing themselves up from Super 2 to throw down the gauntlet to some of the more seasoned regulars. And grid spots are already starting to fill up. There's a number of drivers out there, guys, looking for co-pilots to team up with in this enduro. So if you want to get in to the Supercars Bathurst 500, come along in a couple of weeks' time. We're going to hold a couple of sessions just for people to learn and understand how driver swaps work in the game, and a couple of strategy sessions as well. And we'd love to see some of you guys along that are considering it but haven't actually signed up, or if you've signed up and have a teammate to do some practice, or if you've signed up and you're looking for a co-pilot, come along and find your co-pilot for the race. We're certainly looking forward to the first special event that we have had for some time here in Automobilista Australia.
Need any extra spots for commentary there, Nether? I think I'll be free. I'll make myself free.
There's a few people that have actually started to volunteer. I thought Rhodey had actually put his hand up for it as well, and then he's found himself a teammate to run with. So there's a few spots going, I think. I know Lewis was possibly looking to run with somebody. I know him and I are teaming up for the very first time in a long time actually, to commentate together. And trying to throw a few new special things that way, but no, we're looking for more drivers than anything at the minute. But happy to take some special comments. But unless you want to get rid of your Switch controller and drive for real,
I might have to get on the horn to Kiwi Chris and wonder whether or not he wants to have a bit of a run as well with the controller. I'm sure two guys with Switch controllers for 500Ks is not going to be any sort of problem at all, is it?
What could possibly go wrong? I hear our mate Stairs has a sim rig that he doesn't use all that often if you want to go and have a crack over there, but you didn't hear that from me. Sorry, Stairs.
Okay. I have been to Stairs' house. I have seen his rig set up. I just haven't ever seen it be used. So I might just pop over there and be like, "Oh, you got any use for that at the moment?" Might just take that away.
Yeah, a little bit of a quote unquote borrowing.
Yeah, borrow it indefinitely. That would be good fun though. Getting in and see that.
We've had a request in the
game
chat from Brandon Ross, which I hope doesn't go fulfilled. But Brandon Ross requests Flay to sing a song live on the stream, and I may step away if that does happen.
I was gonna say.
Anything in particular, Rossi? Anything in particular? I have a wide repertoire to hit on.
I think Rossi is going to find anything that he can find that you probably don't know. So I think you've just asked a very, very poor question here.
It's okay. I don't know.
I'm sure, Floody, while I'm sure you have a wide repertoire of songs, I'm more concerned about how wide your vocal range is, as Brendan Ross requests. Barbie Girl, but you can only sing about a bar of it, so we don't get copyright struck.
Yeah, please, please sing it out of tune. Otherwise, yes, this video will get a copyright strike. Actually, I was looking at that stuff the other day on YouTube because I was looking for some things, and they said, like, if you put someone else's music on, obviously you get copyright strike. But even if you do a cover, apparently it can be done as well. So, like, wow.
There's a few different levels. So if you use like licensed music, what happens is that YouTube goes, okay, all this ad revenue you were going to have goes to the music. So I've had that happen on the Endurance Chat Media channel where we've uploaded our podcast as well. If you're into endurance motorsport around the world, if you like GT3 cars and want to see and hear a bit more about them, Endurance Chat, check it out. But we use a licensed outro music, and every single time we upload it, it picks it up and says, okay, you're not getting any royalties, that this company is getting all the royalties, which is fine because we're not trying to make any money from the podcast. But there are a few particular bands and outlets, etc., who are very, very stringent with actually blocking any use of their copyright. So so there's a bit of difference between like licensing and blocking, and so hopefully any sing song. I'm not going to sing. Sorry, I don't want to subject our audience to that. If you do want to listen to me sing, probably check out an ATCC broadcast because me and Kiwi do like to crack out into song every now and then.
Yeah, there's a very repeated attempt going on to try and get you to sing. I mean, some of the requests that are coming in at the moment are, was it Barbie Girl? Hips Don't Lie,
It's
which I
Raining
think is
Men.
Shakira.
Yeah.
Hans Brunswick's suggestion was, It's Raining Men.
Hallelujah.
Yeah.
What?
There you go, everyone. That counts as your song.
Hey, we did it.
For the race.
We did it. All right. Looks like we finally got everything in order. Fingers crossed. This is third time lucky now. We're going to get a race start here. Nearly 10:30 here in the east, and hopefully we don't have to resort to any more singing, although we'll be singing the praises of whoever can get across the line in first place out of this top half a dozen cars, even the top 8 cars, given how competitive this GT3 field seems to be tonight.
Yeah, I honestly think anyone down to 8th has a chance.
Yeah, and it is a little surprising to see Burko, who qualified, I think, in 4th in the first session this evening, end up in 9th, because he was, remember he had a shocking start last time around, so hopefully he gets a better start and is able to mix it with a few further up the field. It looks like we have all 19 cars finally on the grid and ready for race 2.
All right, Bagsy, do your thing.
Race 2, another qualifying, another Peter Savage on pole.
Ooh.
Lime Mitch in 2nd place is stopping in the pit lane.
Now, I'm not sure
for
what's going
some
on
reason.
here. I think he's having some sort of drama with his wheel, I think. Something's not right, so he's going to have to make up a few spots here, but it looks like he's going
Looks
again.
like, I'm just on board with him at the moment. He's wheeling that wheel from back to right. Maybe a little synchronization issue, maybe just recalibrating that wheel, but it looks like it's all back in place now. So 2nd place, Lime Mitch, currently at the back of the field, but he's going to make his way through, hopefully very carefully. He's got a bit of time to make up there. So Lime Mitch in 2nd, Lewis Wedding in 3rd place with another good qualifying, and he'll be hoping to convert that into a win rather than a podium this time. Brendan Ross we saw holding right behind Lewis Wedding for a lot of that race, just not quite able to make that leap onto the podium. Wolfie Devonish in 5th, which I believe is his worst qualifying when he has actually taken to qualifying. So that's a pretty good stat to have, honestly. 5th place. Will he be able to nab a race win from there? Steve Bolger, we saw absolutely fly from the back of the grid up to 8th place. Starts from 6th now, so by that logic, realistically, he should finish in, I don't know, about -7th. Greg Tara in 7th, alongside Noah Tara yet again. Although this time I think Noah Tara was ahead last race and now Greg Tara is. So they've swapped spots there, but we'll be hopefully battling again. Steve Burko in the chrome version of the Loose Sims Volvo, which is arguably the better looking one. Apologies to Zach Ross in 9th place. Hans Brunswick in 10th after not being allowed to qualify I don't think he was allowed to qualify. He didn't make a qualifying lap. So we've seen Lime Mitch trying to go around the inside there and spoon. Zach Ross, the other Loose Sim Sport Bentley, directly behind his teammate, alongside Ujit Mishra in that Kingfisher Singapore Airlines Porsche. Mike Coulson, Team Antara, had a big crash at Deck 2 in race 1. He'll be hoping for a bit better in this race. He's alongside Luke Joyner, who he's raced fairly often this season. Termo down in 15th. We saw him have a spin on his lap in qualifying 1. Hopefully he's able to do a bit better in race 2. He's alongside his teammate Rody. We've got Xbox v PlayStation back there. Bagacino in 17th, Brian Walsh in 18th, unfortunately DNF'd early in race 1, and Kalen Duncan rounds out the field in 19th.
Right, down to the chicane. Good to see Lime Mitch is back in position. Everything seems to be in order for the BMW for Matt Harvey Repair and Tune Squad. The pace car brakes right and heads down the pit lane. And now the games begin. 2x2, all the way to the control line. And the clock will start to tick. There's a 10-second stop-go penalty for Lime Mitch. Now, I'm a bit worried as to what that is, and I think we're probably going to end up seeing that penalty will probably be cleared from the race, just because I think he was in the spot as he was trying to make it up through the field. But now we get going for the second race of the night, and again, Pete Savage to the fore, leads the field through turn 1.
Oh, it's a big crash behind Rody's round.
There's a huge
Everyone else will
accident,
avoid him, though.
and Rody is off the circuit and trying to get going here. So what has happened to Rody off the start? Let's take a look. Here he goes down the inside. He was looking, and he was on the grass as well. He had to break it. He came together with Ujit Mishra. So that's a huge problem, and probably I'd say on Rody for that one.
Probably. I think almost definitely there. Maybe a little too hot heading into turn 1 on the first lap of the race for Rhodey. He's now at the tail of the field. And it's Peter Savage who leads us through the hairpin on the first lap. Lime Mitch, Lewis Wedding, Will Devenish is your top 4. Brendan Ross dropped the position down to 5th. And it's Bolger and the Torres to round out your top 8.
Devenish got a good jump on Ross at the start there. He managed to get ahead.
And Devenish is looking still very willing. He's trying to go. Lewis Wedding's gone well off at Spoon Corner, and it's allowed Devenish to just go clean through. So easy work for Devenish so far this second race.
I'd say it's going to cost him up the hill here, but I don't think it really is, because having that wider run there, you are able to maintain a bit of speed. I'm more concerned for Brendan Ross, who's got Steve Bolger right behind him. Oh! Oh, Ross is around. Ross is in the wall.
Yeah, it. He did. Bolger gave the rear of the Nissan just the tiniest little touch, which unsettled both the Jaguar and the Nissan, and then Bolger was an absolute roadblock for the likes of the two Taurus who had nowhere to go. So a group of very affected cars there. Bolger down now in 14th, Noah Taro down in 17th. That's Lime Mitch. Yeah.
I'm looking at it again, and it's, yeah, I mean, everything that happened after is probably racing incident. The only thing that might be able to be put here on someone is Will Devenish rejoining unsafely, but there's nothing else he could do. If he was either going to hit the wall on the outside of 130R and bounce back into traffic, or, you know, the only thing you could have said is he could have let off the brakes and just shot down the escape road. But realistically, he can't do that, and that just caused that massive checkup that Noah was expecting, and unfortunately got a lot of people involved. Noah Taro suffered a lot there as well. Brendan Ross and Steve Bolger most.
Now, just Now, just while that's all been happening, yeah, well, you mentioned Lime Mitch went to the lead. I've actually scrolled back and had a bit of a look. Peter Savage and Lime Mitch both went wide through Dunlop last lap around, but Savage had a big moment coming back onto the circuit where the car snapped towards the inside wall. He only just managed to gather it up, and that was enough for Lime Mitch to swing through and take the leading position. It actually eked out a few car lengths as well over the Bentley. So Lime Mitch at the moment leading the race from Peter Savage and Lewis Wedding. Will Devenish, after that first lap kerfuffle, holds 4th place. That is Greg Turra, Steve Burko, Zach Ross, Luke Joyner, Hans Brunswick, and Ujit Mishra is your top 10 at the moment.
And look at this top 3 starting to close up now. Lime Mitch has just had a little bit of a scruffy first sector, and that's allowed Pete Savage and Wedding to close in. Devenish is not out of this either, despite the dramas down at the final chicane. So this is going to be a nice little 4-car train that's just going to try and eke away behind them. Greg Turra is holding off Steve Burko, and Zach Ross is joining that party as well. Here they are, party of 4 out front. This little party of 3 starting to get together as well. And then Joyner and Brunswick starting to get close together as well on the Lamborghinis. Ujit Mishra not too far behind. And there's all sorts of little 2-car battles just starting to form on this opening couple of laps.
Burko and Tara are resuming their battle right where they left off in the first race. They're basically pushing each other down the back straight. The big Bentley underneath the rear wing of the GTR. Not for much longer as Burko jukes to the inside for that 5th position. Can't quite get the power down to make that move stick, but they're certainly continuing their battle from last race. As the top scorer basically nose to tail.
Flying Mitch is definitely a cork in this bottle here, but he's taken advantage, and we'll see how well his defensive driving goes. We've seen one absolute masterclass of defensive driving from Noah Tara. Let's see if we can get one from Lime Mitch as well, as Will Devenish sets the fastest lap at the back of this train of 4. Bit of a gap to the train of 3 behind them, as it looks like Hans Brunswick might have to go on Luke Joyner. Not quite. Actually, Luke Joyner's gone very wide. Luke Joyner up 6 positions, soon to be 5 if he gets passed by Hans Brunswick. Yeah, there's a big old gaggle of cars. Everyone's still fairly close to the front.
Just a bit further down the field, there was a little bit of a coming together between Mike Coulston and Ujit Mishra into the chicane as the top 3 are trying to go side by side through the exit of Dunlop. That's just spun Ujit Mishra around and dropped him down the order with him and Mike Coulston. There's 3 or 4 really close battles on track. There's another 4-car train at the tail end of the top 10. Remember, for the last throws of the points as well, Steve Bolger just going down the inside of Kaylin Duncan through Denga 1. Not really a passing opportunity there, but they play on.
Yep.
Sorry, this battle at the front, Lewis Wedding with a big old moment into the hairpin there, and that was very lucky to not be an accident. He arrested the lock up and the slide and has managed to keep. Yeah, these front 4, we've got there's 1 second between Lime Mitch in 1st and Will Devenish in 4th. Wedding's gone wide outside the screen.
Yeah, Wedding wide in back of shot as well. I just saw it off the other screen. So
position.
That's an easy pass for there. And then there's a pass on for the lead here happening as well, with Lime Mitch having to go defensive on Pete Savage. Going to make him go the long way around. Going to try and do the same thing that happened in the first race. And Lime Mitch just drives it straight down the inside. That's good defence, but it's going to allow Savage to go right around the outside. And now Lime Mitch has to give the room. Well, Devenish is trying to pick his way through there as well. Oh, and there's tagging and sideways action. And Wedding's completely around behind them. Wedding tried to gas it up and get going, so he's going to now fall to 7th.
Three wide down the main straight. It's Bentley versus BMW versus Lamborghini. The BMW takes the inside line, and Savage goes well off into the weeds there, and that returns the lead of the race to Lime Mitch. Now, Savage, can he hold on against where Will Devenish? No. So the Lamborghini, for the first time tonight, is ahead of Peter Savage's Bentley, but they've still got to process through Lime Mitch, who audaciously took the lead back down the inside of turn 1.
And I think that's completely fair as well, that he didn't touch Pete Savage. I know those two had some history at the last race as well, with coming together a couple of times, but that was not any contact whatsoever. Lime Mitch fought that fairly and squarely and left him the room, and Savage just ran out of road. But now it's Will Devenish's turn to apply the blowtorch to the back of the BMW.
Just in the back of shot there, you can see that Burko has actually gotten past Greg Tara as well. So
he
that's
goes well.
Here as Devenish sends it to get it done. He gets the gas down, and he's going to take the lead of the race. Now, can Lime Mitch use that BMW power to hold that inside line as we approach Spoon Curve? But that inside becomes the outside for Spoon, and he's not going to be able to get the track position.
He's going to try.
The outside.
If he pulls this off, this is going to be absolutely amazing, but he's not going to be in the right spot to do it. Maybe get the power down a bit. Now Savage buys in, and because Lime Mitch was wide, now he's vulnerable and he's on the wrong side. If Savage can get a little bit of a run here, this is going to be he'll have the high ground into turn 130R, but he couldn't quite get it done again.
Lime Mitch had the slipstream going up.
Big sideways, big wiggle.
Almost done what Will Devenish did. He had that slipstream up the hill, and that helped him maintain position over Peter Savage. So Will Devenish, after going past Lime Mitch, gives him a little thank you on the way out with that slipstream.
What a fight!
And he probably knows that it's better to have Lime Mitch behind him.
Burko is through on Greg Tara, and now Zach Ross is looking for a way through as well as they go side by side into turn number 1. And Tara tries to do the same trick that Pete Savage did, hold it around the outside, but not on this occasion. Now looks for the switch back on the inside, but Zach Ross will have the preferred position here for the next corner, which is a left-hander. and Greg Turner's lost a couple of spots in about a half a minute, but he's still up one position from where he started.
Just back to that battle at the front, Lane Mitch was right on the tail of the Lamborghini, then just got the tiniest little wiggle through the second half of the S's there, and he's dropped just a little bit away from the rear of the Lambo. Peter Savage has been incentivized by that as well. Just an update on some of those battles further down the pack. Lewis Wedding down into 7th after his mistake a few laps ago. Steve Bolger and Brendan Ross have actually worked their way back up to 10th and 11th.
Oh,
So
moment for Hans
cleared...
Brunswick. Sorry, guys. Hans has had a bit of a moment, I think, through Dunlop. And a number of cars have gone sailing through, including Bolger and Brendan Ross. I saw him doing some lawn mowing on the outside of Dunlop. Now, did he do this all by himself? Yeah, it looks like he did. He was well clear of Luke Joyner, so here's the incident. Just applied the power a bit too much. Car started to understeer wide, and he had a spin and a whack of the wall, and that's why he was doing some lawn mowing, because he was trying to recover to track, and then he had to get out of the road of all the cars behind.
I'm going to bring us back to the front because Peter Savage has got a better run out of Spoon this time around. And he's got the inside line heading towards 130R. It's a game of chicken once again. They're rubbing door handles as they go through 130R. They can't go through side by side. Surely not. They do. They managed to sneak through. Lane Mitch has the inside line for the chicane though. And Peter dives down the outside. Very deep under brakes. You have to be a brave man to outdo Lane Mitch on the brakes and gets the move done. So now he's got to try and eat into that gap that Will Devonish has already pulled, which is to the tune of a second and a half already, while these two have been battling behind. So well done, Peter Savage, but he's got a job to do now if he wants to get that that leading position back.
There's a big battle brewing here, though, Bagsy, isn't there? Look behind these two. The others are starting to close in now as these two are tripping over each other.
Big moment for Greg Taro. Zach Ross
he's off the ground on the road.
Yeah, great. Looks like Zach Ross got a bit crossed up mid-corner and had to get hard on the brakes, and Greg Taro was not expecting it. Also got on the brakes and locked up and ran wide, so he's ceded position to Lewis Wedding now. So Lewis gets one freebie back.
Here we go. This is what happened here. So what happened to Greg Taro? Did he... he was a bit far behind, tried to send it, and... Oh, no, it was Taro that got crossed up big time. Drove it in way too hard. Got a bit close to the back end of the car. Some nice dent in the driver's side door on that Nissan as well. That probably shouldn't be there.
I think that was from that first lap shenanigans that Greg got involved in. Just like to say that Brendan Ross, who was probably one of the worst affected in that initial shunt, is back up to 8th position. Yeah. So he's doing pretty well for himself.
Bolger and Ross have done their best to try and make the best of a bad situation after all of that. They're recovering pretty well. They're both inside the top 10. Comfortably inside the 10. In fact, I think Bolger is probably not too far away from picking off Luke Joyner for 9th. And then Brendan Ross is just ahead of him.
Now, just quickly, while there's a little lull, I'll just echo that what happened to Hans one or two laps ago was basically almost an exact replica of what Peter Savage did earlier on the race to lose that first position to Lime Mitch on the second lap. The only difference was that Savage didn't make contact with the wall. He actually managed to pull it up before the Bentley made contact there. So a frantic first half of the race. Can you believe we're already halfway through this race, the second race of the evening at Suzuka?
Yeah, this is the half distance mark lap at the moment, lap 8. We'll get 16 on the night, so you're right, halfway through this final race of the night.
And Will Devonish sets the fastest lap of the race for the race, 1:59.3. So not quite the outright pace, but not too far away actually is Peter Savage, 1:59.39 for Savage. So he's not letting Devonish skip away entirely uncontested just yet.
Yeah, this is definitely not over. As you said, only 300s between them. So if Devonish hadn't set the fastest lap there, Pete Savage definitely was going to. So definitely can't count this out, and any potential mistake from Devonish will open up for Pete to get back in there and get both past him. As we're just looking back at Bolger having a go on Luke Joyner as they go up the S's, it's just harassing him. He wants to get past him, so he can shot at Brendan Ross.
He'd got that move done, actually. He was in front coming out of the final chicane ahead of Luke Joyner, and Luke Joyner's just repassed him down the main straight and into turn 1. So Bolger's going to have to do the hard work all over again here. Termo and Hans Brunswick have started to get interested in the back of this little battle as well. Termo driving very, very smartly as well, having avoided most of the contact and the carnage that's gone on. Here goes Bolger down the inside.
Bulge.
Oh, the door started to close. close a little bit late there for Joyner, and he was a little bit late to realise what was going on, but eventually left him enough space for Bolger to get through into P9.
And he skipped away as well. Just a quick note, that last lap around, we mentioned both Devonish and Peter Savage in the 59 threes. Only other driver in the 59s was Lewis Wedding in 5th place now. He's actually managed to scoop up both Zach Ross and Greg Turra, made short work of Zach Ross after coming onto his tail, and has Steve Burko and Lime Mitch on his radar as the next 2 cars to pass the battle for third.
Still a chance at a podium here for Lewis Wedding, despite that mistake.
Absolutely.
There's definitely a lot of time still to go, and he's only 2 seconds behind Burko and nearly 3 behind Lime Mitch, so podium still potentially beckons, absolutely, for Lewis Wedding. It'd be a good return for an instant. Pretty much he's going to class his own fault, just got on the loud pedal a bit too early, and Bolger's now gapped Luke Joyner.
Lime Mitch has just had an issue coming out of the first corner. He's got too happy on the loud pedal.
He's lost a spot to Steve Burko here, so Burko goes through. And was that just a moment with the traction control kicking in at the wrong particular time, or just applying a little bit too much? So he had lost a little bit of time, so into turn 1, and very, very wide, and it was wide of the second line there as well, and on the curb, lost it on the curb, and Bolger was, Burko was there in a jiffy. And
Lime Mitch was holding up Burko as well. Last lap around, 2-minute 1.1 versus a 2-minute flat 0.4 for the two of them. So Lime Mitch is going to be able, with Lime Mitch out of the way, Burko might feel a little released to go and chase the leaders. But the leaders, again, last lap around, the only 2 cars in the 59s, not even Lewis Wedding was able to get into the 59s last lap around. So the top 2 are in the class of their own, really. As we are 12 minutes remaining in this second race this evening.
This gap is starting to stabilise a little bit. I mean, the last time around, Pete Savage was a 10th quicker than Devonish overall. Purple first sector from Pete Savage on the last round by a 10th, actually nearly 2 tenths.
Almost identical middle sectors.
Yeah, very close. 3 thousandths of a second, not much in it at all. So some small ground being gained in this little phase of the race. It's not the deficit that Will Devonish had to overcome in race 1, so there's still a lot of time in this. What is it when they get to the line this time around? It's another 2 tenths gone, and a fastest lap of the race for Pete Savage. So great final sector. A 24-1 played a 24-3.
Oh, I'm just going to steal your eyes now. They're back to the battle for third. Lime Mitch going to go around the outside into turn 1. He's going to hold it. There's a little bit of contact there, but Lime Mitch managed to hold the outside line and doesn't quite get the power down. He was very brave to try and get through turns 1 and 2 on the outside there, but Burko gave him just enough room to try and get that move done. In the end, Burko managed to hold on that time around.
This is allowing Lewis Wedding to catch up as well. He was quicker than both these two on the last occasion, 4 tenths quicker than Burko, and a mile quicker than Lime Mitch. Mind you, Lime Mitch had the poor first sector on the last lap as well, so don't count this Antara Honda Acura, same thing, just 2 different parts of the world, NSX out for a potential podium. And Zach Ross is looking pretty racy as well here. He's really staying with Lewis Wedding, isn't he?
I was just about to say, of those 4 cars that we had on screen a moment ago, the fastest last lap was Zach Ross, a 2-minute 0.2 versus a 2-minute 0.4 for Lewis Wedding. So he's certainly not letting them get away. So we've got a drive-through penalty for Luke Joyner. That'll probably be the track limits.
Yep.
That's certainly behind that group as well is also on a similar pace to Zach Ross as well. So he's also gained on these guys.
Oh, we've got a moment for Ujit Mishra. He's around, I think that's between on the run to Degner 2, is it? Yes, it is.
Definitely.
So he's had a moment. I was just cycling through to see if I could find Luke Joyner to see if it was for violating the track limits. And what happened to Ujit Mishra here? Looks like he might have just got his entry all wrong into Degner 1. A little bit of lag for him as well. And yep, clipped the curb, got on the power too early, and loops the Porsche, but importantly stays out of the wall.
I'm going to bring us back to the battle for third because it's kicking off again. Lime Mitch was very quick out of the spoon corner to try and pull up on the side of Burko.
He's vulnerable to Wedding here now. Wedding's got slipstream. He's going to send it if he gets half a chance. And he does. Very late, though. Very, very late. Oh, was there a touch there?
I think there was a little bit of a touch, but the Wedding got out of it, ceded the position.
All of them had track cuts last lap around, so Lime Mitch, Lewis Wedding, Zach Ross must have found a foul the track limits
It'll
there.
be at the final chicane.
They all tried to gain a little bit on the car ahead. Speaking of the car ahead, Peter Savage last lap around took 8/10 out of Will Devenish. So that battle for the lead is now only half a second between Will Devenish Lamborghini and Peter Savage in the Bentley. That gap has come down much, much quicker than we were maybe expecting, and it's looking like it's even coming down a little more. Not quite, but Devenish responds this time around.
Oh, he's had a slide. He's had a moment off at the hairpin though as well. But keeping in mind what Will Devenish said to us in the interview after race one, he said he was fighting the car for the early part of the race, and then it really started to get into his zone. It really started to work really well. So if Pete Savage has got to make anything work, he's got to get in front in probably the next 2 laps. Otherwise, potentially, if Will has not if Will has not made any changes to the car, he might end up just driving away at the same rate that he was closing in on Savage in race one.
And go ahead, Bagsy.
I've been wrong about 2 things. I picked Steve Bolger for the win, which was proven wrong immediately. But then I said Peter Savage was going to slow him down towards the end of this race because he'd be so much more tired. But if anything, he's just found new fire because he is absolutely on it here.
Yeah, absolutely. A middle
Line
sector.
Mitch is wide. Line Mitch is wide. Sorry, guys. The Line Mitch was very wide at 130R. Now, judging by the rules that were put in place for the night, looked like to me he was all 4 wheels over the track limits, and he should have given that position to Lewis Wedding, but he hasn't. So that might be contested. Although Wedding might make short work of it if he gets a nice run down to turn 1, so it'd probably be inconsequential anyway. Lime goes to defend, and Lewis now has to back out of it. Trying to go the long way around Lewis Wedding, but he's off in the grass. He's well off the track.
That was a big hip and shoulder from the pair of them. I'm not sure if Lime Mitch held his line or if Wedding was just too audacious on the entry, but that was a big hit side by side in the first corner.
Well, here it is. Let's have a look at this again from Lewis Wedding's point of view. Down the main straight, they screamed. Here's the onboard. Mine went to cover, left him a space on the outside. Ooh. I don't know if there was a touch there or not. I think maybe it just might have been a bit of a bold manoeuvre.
That was definitely a touch.
I believe that Wedding's turned in on Mitch there, and I think that's on Lewis in a racing incident, but Lime Mitch might have been a little bit cheeky. Nah, his defence was fine as well. I think it was just he got Wedding turned in thinking Lime Mitch might have been going to cede that position, and he didn't, and he wasn't obliged to.
What this has done is it's allowed Steve Burko to escape. So Burko's got a clear margin now over Lime Mitch of nearly 2 seconds for 3rd place. So that's a pretty positive outcome for the current Super 2 points leader. They'll be looking to try and consolidate that points advantage. Very, very slim actually over Lime Mitch in Super 2. With only 2 rounds remaining and 4 races to go across those 2 rounds. And that's his teammate that's really applying the pressure to the back of the BMW.
Just like that, we only have 6 minutes left, and Will Devenish seems to be heading off this challenge from Peter Savage. Peter's staying there with him, but hasn't really had any serious looks since he's arrived.
He had a little bit of a look approaching the Denga curves last lap around, but didn't quite manage to get it done. In fact, that's why Will Devenish was able to shred a little bit of a gap. But this time around, Peter seems to be so much stronger in this first sector. You can see the Bentley seems to just grow onto the rear of the Lamborghini through these sweeping corners. A little bit of understeer there that time around, but you can see the gap comes down quite aggressively. And then as we get over this hump here, the Lamborghini seems to find something in response.
Devenish, interestingly, seems to be starting to lose traction right, so almost at the end of the curve. It's not even mid-corner. It's just when he's getting on the power as he's accelerating out of the corner that he's losing it. So it's just that very, very loose rear end. It seems like as he goes quite deep there, very deep there, but it gives you that better drive out, so you'll keep ahead heading into Spoon. It just seems like the car hasn't come to him, the rear hasn't come to him as much as it did in that first race.
It's just driving it a little bit hard into the opening part of the corner. and sometimes the car's just pushing through the corner, understeering off into there. But at the hairpin that last time around, it wasn't so bad because it allowed him to pick up the throttle for it. But look at the run that Pete Savage has got.
Run.
Here he goes.
He's going to be clear by the time they get to 130R here, side by side. Just a drag race. Devonish a bit bolder under brakes. He goes a little wide. Savage has got the opportunity to go around the outside. He saw him do this move to line Mitch earlier this evening. Can Devonish hold on late on the brakes? Savage got the inside line again, but doesn't quite get it done. So Devonish, great defensive driving in return this time around and managed to hold on to the lead.
It's the same thing we saw at some of the other circuits, though, too, guys. It's when you pull out of the slipstream, even if you get a good run, it's sometimes just like just hitting a brick wall. You've got to time it to perfection.
Yeah, I wonder if Savage has maybe a little bit more downforce on his car. Maybe that's just the Bentley in general, because it seemed that he had a full head of steam coming out of Spoon Corner. You expected him to blow past down 130R, but then the Lamborghini started to come back and started to respond on the latter half of the straight. He's a bit ragged now, though, this time, taking very late entry lines as well, Devonish.
He's got so much more speed through his S's that fortunately the S's aren't an overtaking place. But I think his biggest problem is the Bentley has the aerodynamic properties of a small brick attached to a larger brick, whereas the Lamborghini is much more sleek and able to cut through the air nicer.
He's not going to be quite close enough to send a dive down the inside of the hairpin this time around, but maybe with a great run out of Spoon Corner, could have again. I think Devonish is actually using a bit more of his rears to try and rotate the car out of the slow corners. You can see it last lap, and then again there, he's just trying to pick up the throttle to actually rotate the car. So it might be hurting the rears, especially as we get into this late stage of the race. 2 minutes, 20 seconds remaining. So probably another two laps. Yeah, once we finish this one.
Steve Burko, who had a comfortable third position, is now in an uncomfortable third position, and we've got what's starting to become a five-way battle for third place now, because Lime Mitch and Zach Ross have both caught back up to Burko, and Greg Tara and Lewis Wedding are catching all three of them as Zach Ross has run into the back of Lime Mitch and Spoon as Burko goes wide.
Yeah, Ross just had a little nibble at Lime Mitch in the back of the shot, and that allowed Lime Mitch to sort of escape a little bit, but it didn't sort of work for him because Burko was ahead. Yeah, a lot of these guys playing a high-speed game of chicken into turn, turn 16 or 15?
Speaking of game of chicken, Peter Savage down the inside into turn 1 for the lead of the race. Gets the high ground. There's a little bit of contact in the mid-corner, but Savage takes the lead of the race back as we start lap 15. 2 laps to go here, and Peter Savage is back in the lead of the race.
Well done. What a move. Bold manoeuvre into the opening corner. Got that move off the final chicane and the drag around the final corner done and put it to great effect. A little bit of elbows out, a little bit of rubbing was fine. Nothing wrong with that at all. But now he's got to hold it for the next 2 laps. Going to be the longest 3 or 4 minutes of his life at the moment with that Lamborghini a lot closer to his rear bumper than what it was in the last race.
Yeah, and I was about to say, let's see if he can use the first sector prowess to his advantage there. Hasn't quite been able to step away from from Devonish as much as he's like, but he's pulled half a second in the first sector, and that's more than Devonish.
Skated it in on the rear brakes into the hairpin.
So maybe those rears are absolutely toast, because that's now about a second.
He's lost surprisingly little time there. I've got 6/10 on the lifetime in between them. But that was, he lost, comparatively little time. He just went stylishly around the corner instead of quickly.
Ibisu style, right? That's what they call it, the drift jump. As they come onto the Western Straight. Let's see, we'll get a sector time here to show you what the actual gap is at the moment. The Lamborghini actually looks like it's a lot quicker in a straight line at 2/10, and he's gained a lot back. It was almost a second coming out of the hairpin, and Savage has to go defensive into the chicane here. That could compromise his run onto the main straight. He's had to take a narrow line while Devonish gets a much better run, and there's going to be nose to tail heading through to start the final lap of the evening.
White flag in the air, so final lap commenced. Lewis Wedding's picked off another position. He's got past Zach Ross, that's up to P5. Lime Mitch has really started to close down the door to Steve Burko, but here goes Devonish down the inside at turn 1, returning the favour that Pete Savage did to him just a lap ago. and it's going to be allowed him to hold the high ground, but can Pete Savage hold the line for the inside for the first part of the snake? Yes, he can. They're going to run side by side. There's a bit of rubbing. Will's got the ascendancy for the next corner. He pops out just ahead for the time being, but it might be short-lived.
Now, Savage has to get back in the wheel tracks as quickly as possible and try and get the ascendancy on Will. Right up to the rear bumper is the Bentley as they go over Dunlop. It's not going to be too many opportunities left, though, for the Bentley, who's been quicker in this first sector.
The biggest problem Savage has is the bits where he has been able to make the overtakes work. Has genuinely been in that first corner, and that round the inside maneuver he pulled hasn't been stronger into the hairpin here. He's been a bit better into Spoon.
Big lock up into
as
there's a lock
well
up.
as a touch.
Yeah, there was a lock up from both of them, a front from Savage, a rear from Devonish, and ended up meaning that there was a little bit of contact there. Is that the catalyst that breaks the back of this battle for P1? Is Savage close enough? He needs a good run off of Spoon.
He's gonna have to take the good of run off Spoon, stay behind him in 130R, and try and make that move around the outside, then inside into the triangle chicane. At the end, that's his only chance at this, and he's sticking exactly where he needs to be up the hill.
Devonish got a great run out of Spoon Corner, though. Really did as much as he could to nullify any chance that the Bentley might have as they approach 130R. There's nothing between them.
Very good run here for Peter Savage's Bentley.
Oh, Will covers it off and committed. Will can't defend it. Savage is going to go around the outside. Is he going to get the brakes on hard enough? He's going to get it on. He stays within the limits. He's got it done. He's got to get the block pass on now. He does. He's going to hold Devonish wide. He's going to win this race. What a fantastic move into the final chicane, and he's got it done on the last lap.
Peter Savage wins by 0.094 of a second.
And it's
Will Devonish.
Burko's going to get P3. Wedding has managed to get Lime Mitch for P4 down at the chicane as well. Fantastic result for Burko.
Astonishing finish.
That was absolutely brilliant racing from the pair of them in the final stage. We should go back and watch a replay of that final sector and watch Peter Savage. I think from either Peter Savage's on board or from the helicopter camera if we can, because that was just brilliant.
Yeah, he sold the move beautifully at the end of the day. He lined him up as if he was going to send it down the inside, which he knew Will was going to cover it off, and then he had that move made all the way around the outside, plenty of room to do it. He kept his two wheels within inside the track limits, and he held on. He made the move work.
That's going to be move of the GT3 series for that, around the outside into the Casio triangle. Well done. Round out the top 10, Zach Ross, Greg Tara, Brendan Ross, Steve Bolger, Termo with a 10th place. Congratulations to Termo. Hans home in 11th, Noah Tara after a tortured race in 12th, Kalen Duncan 13th, Luke Joyner in 14th. Rhodey's going to come home for another point in 15th position, a pair of points for his birthday for the Rhodey, for Benji. And Bagacino in 16th, Brian Walsh will come home 17th. Ujit Mishra, a lap down in 18th, is the last finisher of the race. But what a race from top to bottom. It was action-packed throughout the entire field. And that finish, my God, what a finish.
We are spoilt. We have been spoilt with that finish. We thought that the Monza fuel mileage miracle was something. We've seen some great finishes in GT3 over the last couple of seasons, and that's another one. We saw that I remember a few years ago, I think it was, Bagsy, you and I, we called the last Suzuka race back in 2019. And if memory serves me correctly, it was Greg Tara that tried to pull the exact same manoeuvre going around the outside of Lewis Wedding on the final lap to try and win that race, and he couldn't quite pull it off. We've seen it happen tonight, though, and that's how it's done.
Yeah, and we've seen Peter Savage do that move and attempt that move on Will Devonish as well earlier in this race and succeed with it on other people in the previous race. That was just absolutely well done, and credit to Will Devonish as well. He saw exactly what was happening. Yeah, he came up, and Peter Savage sold the dummy really well. He looked like he was going to the outside, so Will Devonish went there, blocked it, and Savage absolutely sent that round the outside, left the racing room, and then it was just that drag race to the finish line that the Bentley just won. I reckon if the finish line was at the entrance to the first corner and they didn't have to worry about turning for that corner, then the Lamborghini would have won.
And the one thing
We
about all that too is that Lion Mitch, we were hoping that he was going to be one of the ones to knock on the door of the podium. Well, he's broken that duck of fourth, and fourth. He's finished fifth, so
yeah,
not the result he was after, but he was right in there fighting away the way that we hoped he was going to take it up to the lead guys, and he did. And he was leading the race for a while, which is good to see. We had a bit of variance out front. But no, we've got to take nothing away from our race winner. And all the top three are here, Floody. And I got a funny feeling there's going to be some pools of sweat in some of the seats of these racing rigs right now.
absolutely right. We'll start with our race winner, Peter Savage, taking home both races tonight. We got to start with that last lap. Take us through that last lap from getting past on the first corner to setting up the Devonish and making the move in the chicane. It was just unbelievable stuff.
Yeah, cheers. That was again such a great battle with Will. I honestly feel like he's by far one of the easiest drivers to battle with, and every single time I'm near him, we just seem to have some sort of battle that ends up going on for usually the rest of the race. And to be honest, it's some of the most fun racing you ever get, being able to race so close with someone in such tight areas and still come out without a scratch.
Yeah, and it was great racing from the both of you to get through that final sector without making contact. But you had to do the inverse of the first race there, where you were the hunted as opposed to being the hunter. This time you were able to really reel him in and get into that situation. Is it a bit of a different mindset going from the hunter to the hunted, or
Um,
vice versa?
well, for me, like Will mentioned it in the other race, obviously I spent a lot of my life doing like rally racing and stuff like that. So the one thing that I find really easily when it comes to racing is when I'm on my own, I forget about everyone around me, no matter if they're in front or behind, and I just focus on doing my lap times. And if I manage to catch people in front or get caught from behind, I'll deal with it when it happens. But I generally just get the mindset of just doing my laps, and what happens happens. And with a little bit of tuning to the car, I was able to get my tires to be much better at the end of the race, and I was able to really put the pressure down.
Yeah, you seem to really climb into the pace throughout the race. Just talk us through that move at the chicane. You pulled it off 2 or 3 times earlier on Lime Mitch. How much is the heart beating as you set up that move?
Oh man, like the rear of your car when you have to brake that late and try go around the outside and get enough turn in to be able to get to the next corner before them. The rear just won't stop kicking out, and you're just hanging on for dear life, and yeah, your heart rate really gets racing.
Well, it certainly had our heart rate racing as well, and I'm sure everyone watching at home, congratulations! 2 wins from 2 tonight, 2 pole positions, a perfect evening for you, Peter Savage. Congratulations!
Thank you.
And second place tonight for both races, Will Devonish. Will, we got to stop doing it like this, man. It was such a close race between yourself and Peter Savage there. Take us through from your perspective.
Yeah, I made some changes to the car between races, and it was really a dumb move. I thought the tires were going great halfway through, and then the last half they just absolutely destroyed themselves. Even though the lap times were there, it sort of allowed Pete to get back into it. So yeah, he was had about 5 laps there where all I could hear was the Jaws theme song tracking me down. So, but yeah, that last lap, I just had this beaming smile on my face because like there's not many people I can race that closely to, and not hit and not bump and offer that much respect. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and it's great to hear both of you echoing that same sentiment. It must be nice knowing that you can fight really properly hard without worrying of any incident about to happen when you meet someone like that. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think after the first few races where we had our battles, like we really think about it a lot more, being side by side, and really go out of our way not to sort of bump each other or do anything dirty. We really want to know that the winner is the better driver, not something untoward, I guess.
And with the double win for Savage, it actually closes down the championship battle quite dramatically. Are you starting to feel the Jaws theme song for the championship as well between the two of you?
Don't want to think about it at the moment. I just want to take every race as it comes. I'm really enjoying the Sprint Series format. So, yeah, just take every race as it comes, see what happens at the end.
Well, congratulations on your second place this evening and for putting on a great show between yourself and Peter Savage. Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
And third place tonight for the second race was Steve Burko. Steve, you were engaged in a quite willing battle between yourself, Greg Turra, Zach Ross, and Lewis Wedding that you came out on top with. Just take us through that battle, because while we saw bits and pieces of it, we couldn't quite capture the magic on the broadcast.
Yeah, starting ninth was probably one of the worst things that I could do at that race. But just stuck to my guns, got up a couple of positions, and had a timely incident around in the chicane somewhere, which sort of made me jump up the leaderboard a little bit. And yeah, ended up behind Tara, and we had a cracking battle in race one. And it continued on through to race two, but this time we were both on fresh tires, so there was a lot more grip out there.
So did you find the battle in the first race different to the second race, or was it just a bit more of the same?
Well, yeah, it was a bit of a different battle because in the first race I was slowly losing a lot of grip out of the corners and stuff like that, and it was towards the end of the race, so the tires were pretty shot. I made a little bit of an adjustment for the second race, and lo and behold, it actually worked out well for me, so I was quite happy with it.
Now, towards the end of the race, you had Hot on your tail, Lion Mitch, Lewis Wedding, and Zach Ross as well. Does that sort of pressure really come to your head, or is it something you just put out of your mind and concentrate on?
Now and then I would look in the rear views, but only on the straights. I just made sure that wherever I went through the corners, my main aim was to hit every apex that I could, and I think I did a pretty good job with it.
Yeah, you did well to hold them off behind to take home third place in the second race tonight. Congratulations, Steve Burko, on your podium position.
Thank you very much.
Well, after that race, I need an aspirin and a lie down because my head is spinning. What an absolute cracking race.
Yeah, you're not wrong there. And I'm just going to go with Bagsy's suggestion here because we've actually got a little bit of a unique helicopter shot here. So this is actually from the game. So here it is. This is the move that won this race. So there's 130R. So if we slow it down a little bit here, Pete Savage has obviously made his intentions very clear because Will's coming over to cover that line. And then as we let it go, very quick switch back to the other side and down and around the outside. And you can see here, just already was just nosing ahead before the corner. That little piece of the road there is actually the part of the circuit that forms the west layout. Fully was half a car length ahead of Will at the just before the apex of the corner. Will comes back, leaves the space. Pete Savage just keeps just the two outside left tyres just go over the white line. That's legal, and manages to end up ahead. Puts the block on at precisely the right time, and gets his nose ahead and manages to drive away and just win by the barest of margins.
Is that the closest victory in AMS Oz history? Certainly the closest that I've seen, I think.
Yeah, I think that's got to be one of the closest we've seen. There was that one. There was also the one-lap sprint finish at Monza a couple of years ago. That had something similar happen as well. It's got to be probably one of the close finishes, and it's something I think we probably need to go back and find in the record books and just check all that out because it'd be right up there with one of the narrowest finishing margins.
Yeah, and let Bagsy go. Sorry,
I think it was slightly. I think Monza might have been in the 10th, like just over a 10th of a second range. If my memory might be incorrect on this though. So I think this is definitely a contender for the closest AMS Oz finish ever.
Yeah, and what surprised me most about just watching that helicopter shot was even though Will Devenish got an amazing run out of Spoon Corner, the work from Savage through the 130R and to set Will up like that into the chicane, that was what won him the race. It wasn't the run out of Spoon, it was the setup into that corner. So I was surprised that he actually managed to do that after Will got such a good run, because I thought Will had done enough to win that race. But yeah, in the end, it was an absolute cracking finish.
Just going back to have a look at that finishing margin. At the end of the day, it was 0.273 was the final margin. I'm actually just trying to go back.
Best lap. That's the best lap gap. It was 0.094 was the final lap at the gap at the line. Tiny. Blink and you miss it sort of stuff.
Yeah, I'm actually just going through to see if I can find that that Monza race, but it's starting to elude me at the moment. So I think we'll probably have to do a bit of homework and come back and take a look at that for the next round in 2 weeks, which, as we said, is Phillip Island. It's going to be one of the events I think we're probably looking forward to, because it's a circuit that will probably suit a lot of the GT3 machinery, a lot of medium to high speed corners, some pretty solid overtaking zones. It will definitely be a round that we look forward to. Please tune into the streams for this Thursday for Supercars, also for the ATCC over on the Endurance Chat Media channel. And yes, Michael, I do have the correct screen on the end this time. As always, please drive safely, everyone, and we'll see you later on this week on Thursday. Bye for now.